Let the modern world fade away. Take a deep breath, slow and easy, and for a moment allow the weight of your day, the soft hum of your room, the small, steady glow of your screen, the long list of things you carried through the hours, to slip quietly into the background until there is only darkness and the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Now imagine a different breath. 80 million years ago, in what will one day be called Western North America, the late Cretaceous sky hangs over a wide, warm floodplain. The day has been long. The sun is sinking behind a line of distant low hills. The air smells of warm mud, of fern resin, of magnolia blossoms, of the soft animal warmth rising from a single immense body resting at the edge of a slow brown river. The body belongs to an old Triceratops. She's the size of a small bus. Her great frill, scarred from years of dominance displays and old combat with the bull rivals of her territory, catches the last copper light along its upper edge. Her 3 horns, the long brow horns and the short nasal horn, are dulled by long use. Her flanks rise and fall with slow, steady breaths. She is not alone. Around her, 6 other Triceratops are bedding down for the evening. Younger cows, 2 calves, perhaps a year old, curled near their mothers, a young bull hanging at the edge of the group, watchful. The matriarch is the oldest, the largest, the most respected. She has chosen this bend in the river. The herd follows her choice. This is the late Cretaceous, the last great chapter of the age of dinosaurs. The world tonight feels, in many ways, like a recognizable world. There are flowers, there are insects that pollinate them, there are birds, small ones, ancestral to your own modern sparrows and crows. There are mammals in the leaf litter, there are crocodiles in the rivers, there are turtles in the marshes. Almost everything you would expect to see, alongside the dinosaurs. You're an invisible companion here, weightless beside this old, warm world. You can feel the heat of the day still rising from the trampled mud, hear the slow, muffled rumble of the matriarch's breath, sense the small flicker of insects in the cooling air. But nothing in this world can touch you. You are safe, free to drift between the herd and the river, free to follow the wind into the distant heat haze, free to look down on coasts and continents that no human map has ever drawn. Tonight, we will walk together through the entire Cretaceous period. We are going to begin in the early Cretaceous around 145 million years ago, when the world has just stepped out of the Jurassic, and we are set to end with the Great Chicxulub asteroid impact, 66 million years before your own first breath. Between those bookends, we will meet the giants of the late Cretaceous, the great marine reptile peak in the warm, shallow seas, the slow breakup of the supercontinent Pangaea, into the modern continents, the rise of the flowering plants, the first true birds, the first true mammals living small, careful lives in the shadows of the dinosaurs. We are going to walk slowly. We are set to honour the rocks and the bones and the careful, patient work of the scientists, who across 2 centuries of careful digging and naming and arguing have reconstructed this world for us. Before we step into any single Cretaceous scene, a small, honest framing. The Cretaceous, as we understand it tonight, is reconstructed from rock layers laid down between 145 million years ago and 66 million years ago. The rocks are detailed but incomplete. The bones are abundant but never complete. The plants and pollens and chemistry of the period are recovered in fragments, and our best models of what the Cretaceous was like are exactly that, models. The picture we have built is the best honest reconstruction modern paleontology, geology and climate science can offer, but it is a reconstruction. Some of what we will walk through tonight, the matriarch Triceratops at the river bend, the soft sound of insect wings in the warm dusk, the colour of the late Cretaceous sky, is inference and imagination woven gently into the framework of what the rocks reliably tell us. We will hold that lightly. We will not pretend the picture is photograph perfect. We will simply walk through it together as carefully as we can. This is a long walk. The Cretaceous lasted nearly 80 million years. That is the longest of all the geological periods of the dinosaur age, longer than the Jurassic and longer than the Triassic combined in some reckonings. There is more here than any single night of walking can cover. We will take the slow path through the big moments, leaving most of the small detail aside. We will move at the pace of warm wind across a Cretaceous floodplain, so let the modern world fade away. Settle into whatever supports you. Breathe out slowly, let the day go. There is no urgency tonight. The matriarch is sleeping. The river is running slow. The walk is at the pace of slow surf on a Cretaceous beach. If your eyes close along the way, that is perfectly all right. The world will still be here, breathing in long, slow waves when you return. We begin where every Cretaceous story must begin, with the long, slow breakup of a single great continent. 145 million years ago, when the Cretaceous opens, the world looks almost nothing like the one your modern maps describe. There is still at this point a single great clustered landmass for much of the planet. The supercontinent Pangaea, which had begun to crack apart at the end of the Triassic, has by now split into two larger pieces. A northern continent called Laurasia, which contains the precursors of modern North America, Europe and most of Asia, and a southern continent called Gondwana, which contains the precursors of modern South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia and India. Between them, a narrow warm sea called the Tethys runs east-west, splitting the world into two great hemispheres of land. The two continents are connected at points, and they are surrounded by vast open ocean, the Panthalassa, which covers most of the planet's surface. The sea levels are slightly higher than today. The polar regions, although cool, are not glaciated. There are no ice caps. The world is, in its broad strokes, a hot greenhouse world. We are going to lift up gently from the river bend where the Triceratops matriarch sleeps and watch the slow unfolding of this Cretaceous geography. Time itself folds beneath us. Tens of millions of years pass in slow swallows. Across the long Cretaceous, the two great supercontinents continue to fragment. Laurasia is the more interesting case. Through the early and middle Cretaceous, North America is connected to Europe across what is now the North Atlantic. There is no ocean there yet, just a long rifting valley where the crust is slowly stretching, slowly tearing, slowly admitting the first thin slivers of seawater. Across about 100 million years of slow tectonic patience, this rift will widen. By the end of the Cretaceous, the North Atlantic Ocean will be a recognizable body of water, perhaps a third of its current width. By the time you are walking your own modern coast in your own modern century, the rift will have spread to its present width, with the eastern coast of North America and the western coast of Europe separated by thousands of miles of open ocean. Gondwana fragments even more dramatically across the Cretaceous. South America and Africa, which had been joined for hundreds of millions of years, slowly tear apart. The South Atlantic Ocean opens between them, beginning narrow and saline in the late Jurassic and broadening across the Cretaceous into a recognizable ocean basin. The match of coastlines, the way South America's eastern bulge fits neatly into Africa's western indentation, is one of the most striking pieces of evidence early supporters of continental drift used to argue for their case, in a debate that lasted from the early 20th century until the plate tectonics revolution of the 1960s. India, in the Cretaceous, is also breaking free. She separates from the eastern margin of Gondwana, from what is now Africa and Madagascar, and begins her long northward drift across the Tethys Sea. Across the Cretaceous, and into the early Cenozoic, India will travel something like 3,000 miles on her own, a slow island continent crossing the equator, before finally colliding with the southern margin of Asia and beginning the long, slow uplift of the Himalayas. Tonight, in our walk together, India is a moving island. She is somewhere south of Madagascar, somewhere near the southern Tethys, holding her own strange Cretaceous fauna of dinosaurs and small mammals that, when she finally docks with Asia, will mix with the Asian fauna in ways that still echo in modern Indian biodiversity. Australia and Antarctica, in the Cretaceous, remain joined as a single southern landmass for most of the period. They share a fauna of small dinosaurs and unusual marsupial-line ancestors. The two continents will not fully separate until the early Cenozoic. Tonight, an Australian forest and an Antarctic forest are continuous, with the same trees, the same insects, the same small dinosaurs walking from what will one day be Queensland to what will one day be the Antarctic Peninsula across an unbroken landmass. Let your breath slow. Let the long, slow movement of the continents settle into your awareness. The Cretaceous Earth is a planet quietly reorganizing itself. It is not a static stage on which the dinosaurs play their final act. It is itself an active character. The breaking continents drive new ocean currents, new rainfall patterns, new climates, new isolated faunas. The dinosaurs that walk this Cretaceous world are not the same everywhere. North American dinosaurs differ from South American dinosaurs. African dinosaurs differ from Australian dinosaurs. Each continent, as it pulls away from its neighbours, develops its own distinctive Cretaceous bestiary. We are about to lower ourselves now, briefly, into one of these distinct Cretaceous worlds. We are set to step into the middle of the period, around 100 million years ago, in what will become the modern Sahara of North Africa. The geography here is strange. The Sahara of the Cretaceous is not a desert. It is a vast, lush river system, a network of slow brown rivers and shallow lakes and dense fern thickets that drain into the warm, shallow Tethys Sea to the north. Imagine standing on the bank of one of these rivers. The water is the colour of strong tea. Reeds line the bank. Cycads and ferns grow in the soft red earth above. The air is humid and warm. Insects hum over the slow water. In the middle distance, a long dark shape moves slowly through the river, only the top of its long crocodile-like snout visible above the surface. This is Sarcosuchus imperata, sometimes called supercroc. He is a giant Cretaceous crocodiliform, related to but distinct from modern crocodiles. He grows to perhaps 40 feet long, weighing close to 10 tons. He's one of the largest crocodile-line predators that has ever lived. He is patient, ancient even by Cretaceous standards, his lineage older than most of the dinosaurs walking the same banks. He hunts large fish, the occasional unwary small dinosaur that comes too close to the water, and the floating carcasses of larger animals washed down from the upstream floodplains. He passes within 50 feet of where you stand. You can see his enormous eye set high on his head, watching the bank as he drifts. He does not see you. You are a strange figure in his world. You are not real to him. The Sarcosuchus is one of the great Cretaceous predators, but he is not the most famous in this river system. Further upriver, in deeper warm water, another even larger predator hunts. He is Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, the great sail-backed theropod dinosaur of late early Cretaceous and early late Cretaceous North Africa. He is one of the most extraordinary dinosaurs ever to have lived, and also one of the most misunderstood. For most of the 20th century, Spinosaurus was known only from a few fragmentary fossils, found in the early 1900s in Egypt by the German paleontologist Ernst Stromer. Stromer published careful descriptions of the bones, which suggested a large theropod with a tall sail or fin running along its back, supported by long extensions of the vertebrae. Then, during the Second World War, the bones themselves were destroyed in an Allied bombing raid on the Munich museum that held them. For decades after, Spinosaurus existed only in Stromer's drawings and notes, a tantalizing glimpse of a strange dinosaur gone. It was only in the early 21st century, with new fossil discoveries from Morocco, that paleontologists, led by the Moroccan-American researcher Nizar Ibrahim and his colleagues, began to reconstruct Spinosaurus more completely. What they found surprised even the experts. Spinosaurus was not a typical large theropod. He was a semi-aquatic hunter with a long crocodile-like snout full of conical fish-catching teeth, with strong forelimbs ending in large curved claws, with relatively short hind limbs, with a long flexible tail that resembled, more than anything else, the tail of a modern crocodile. He was, in modern terms, a fishing dinosaur. He may have been the most aquatic large dinosaur that ever lived. He swam in the great river systems of Cretaceous North Africa, hunting the giant fish that lived there, particularly the lungfish and the early ray-finned fish that grew to extraordinary sizes in those warm rivers. He probably also took the occasional smaller dinosaur and the occasional carcass washed down from the floodplains. He was almost a marine reptile by behaviour, although he remained a dinosaur in anatomy. He grew to perhaps 50 feet long. Some specimens may have been longer. He was by some measures the longest theropod dinosaur that has ever lived. Longer even than Tyrannosaurus rex. The sail on his back, supported by spines up to 7 feet tall, was probably used for display, for thermoregulation, for species recognition, and possibly for some hydrodynamic role we do not yet understand. Tonight in our walk we're going to lower ourselves into one of the deeper bends of the Cretaceous River and watch him fish. The water is dark. The current is slow. Sunlight ripples on the surface in slow, lazy patterns. Beneath the surface, large, dark shapes move slowly through the murky water, the great lungfish that are his main prey. He is among them. He is moving slowly, sculling through the water with his long, flexible tail. His head is held just above the surface, occasionally dipping below. His sail breaks the water like a strange ragged fin. He is utterly at home in this watery world. He moves with a confidence that no other large theropod could muster in this medium. He has, across millions of years of evolution, become a creature of the river. He sees a lungfish. He accelerates. The strike, when it comes, is a sudden, powerful lunge of his crocodile-like snout, his long jaws closing on the soft body of the fish. He surfaces with the fish in his mouth, tosses his head back, swallows. He drifts. He looks for another. Settle for a moment. Watch him for as long as you wish. He is one of the most extraordinary creatures the Cretaceous produced. He is also, in his own way, a reminder that the age of dinosaurs was not all about T-Rex and Triceratops. There were dinosaurs doing strange, specialized things in every corner of the world. The Cretaceous was full of experiments, not all of them confined to land. We are about to leave him fishing in his deep brown river and travel forward through the Cretaceous. The slow, tectonic breakup of the continents continues. Across the next 30 million years, North Africa will gradually dry out. The great river systems where Spinosaurus hunts will shrink and become more seasonal. By the end of the Cretaceous, the Sahara will still be lush by modern standards, but it will be very different from the deep-rivered Cretaceous landscape we have just visited. Spinosaurus and his close relatives will go extinct, replaced by other apex predators across the African late Cretaceous. The river giants will pass into rock and silence. We have moved forward across millions of years already. Before we step into the late Cretaceous and the famous fauna of Hell Creek, we are set to spend some time in the early Cretaceous, the long quiet first half of the period that most people, even most dinosaur enthusiasts, know very little about. The early Cretaceous lasts roughly 45 million years, from about 145 million years ago to about 100 million years ago. That is a span longer than the entire Cenozoic, longer than the time between the asteroid impact and your own present. It is, in itself, a vast quiet stretch of dinosaur time. The famous late Cretaceous Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops are still nearly 40 million years in the future when the early Cretaceous opens. The world here is in many ways still a Jurassic-style world that has only just begun to change. We're going to lower ourselves now into one specific early Cretaceous landscape. We are about to step into what is now the Isle of Wight, off the southern coast of modern England, around 125 million years ago. The geography is very different. Britain at this time is not a separate island. She is part of a broad European landmass, still partly connected to North America across the slowly rifting Proto-Atlantic. The Isle of Wight, in this Cretaceous moment, is a low-lying region of broad braided river systems running through dense fern and cycad forest, draining into the warm, shallow seas of southern Europe and northern Tethys. The dinosaur fauna here is remarkable. It is one of the best documented early Cretaceous faunas in the world, thanks to nearly 2 centuries of careful collecting along the eroding cliffs of the southern English coast. The bones come out of the soft rock with each winter storm and have been excavated by amateur paleontologists and professional researchers from the early 1800s to the present day. Tonight, in our walk, we are standing on a wide river floodplain just before dusk. The air is warm and humid. Cycads and tree ferns rise around us. A long, slow river winds through the floodplain, its water the colour of dark tea. Insects hum in the still air. The sky above is hazed with the high, thin clouds of a warm greenhouse world. Moving across the floodplain, in small groups of perhaps a dozen animals, are the Iguanodons. Iguanodon bernisatensis is one of the most historically important dinosaurs in all of paleontology. His teeth, identified by the English doctor Gideon Mantell in the 1820s, were among the very first dinosaur fossils ever recognised. The name Iguanodon, meaning iguana tooth, was coined by Mantell in 1825. Along with Megalosaurus and Hylaeosaurus, he was one of the 3 original dinosaurs used by Sir Richard Owen in 1842 to define the new clade Dinosauria, the terrible lizards. Tonight in our walk he's moving slowly through the ferns. He's perhaps 33 feet long from snout to tail tip. He weighs around 3 tons. He moves on all 4s when feeding, but is quite capable of rearing up on his hind legs when he needs to reach higher branches or scan the horizon for danger. His thumb on each forelimb ends in a large conical spike, which he uses both for stripping vegetation and, in extreme circumstances, as a weapon against predators. His herd this evening contains perhaps 15 animals: adult cows, 2 young bulls, 3 calves of varying sizes, an older matriarch. They are browsing in slow, patient lines, working their way across the floodplain toward the river, where they will drink in the late dusk before settling into the dense fern thickets for the night. Hold the moment lightly. Watch them for a moment. Iguanodon is a different kind of dinosaur from the Triceratops matriarch we have already met. He is more lightly built. He is bipedal more often than he is quadrupedal. His skull is long and narrow rather than broad and frilled. He is, in some ways, a forerunner of the great hadrosaurs that will dominate the late Cretaceous floodplains, although he is not directly ancestral to them. He represents an earlier and parallel evolutionary attempt at the same broad ecological niche, large bulk plant eater of warm, humid floodplains. He is not the only large dinosaur in this landscape. Further upriver, in a stand of dense conifers, a different shape moves. He is large, dark theropod, the apex predator of this part of the Cretaceous world. He is Neovenator celerii, a carcharodontosaurid theropod perhaps 25 feet long. He is not Tyrannosaurus rex, who will not appear for nearly 60 million years yet. He is a different lineage of large predator, related more closely to the great Allosaurus of the Jurassic than to the tyrannosaurs of the future. He hunts iguanodons. He hunts the smaller ornithopods. He hunts whatever he can catch. He is, in his own quiet way, the king of this Cretaceous world, although his crown will pass in time to other dynasties. He is not the only predator here. In the river itself, moving slowly through the dark water, a strange long-snouted theropod hunts fish. He is Baryonyx walkeri, a spinosaur, an early relative of the great Spinosaurus we have already met in the North African rivers. He is perhaps 30 feet long, with a long crocodile-like snout, conical fish-catching teeth, and large hooked claws on his thumbs that he uses to gaff the larger fish he catches. He is one of the first fully aquatic-leaning theropods known to science, and his discovery in 1983 in a clay pit in Surrey by the amateur paleontologist William Walker, whose hammer claw of his Baryonyx specimen the species is named after, reshaped how paleontologists thought about theropod ecology. Before Baryonyx, theropods were largely imagined as land hunters of other dinosaurs. After Baryonyx, the Spinosaur lineage became understood as a major branch of fish-eating, water-loving theropods that occupied river ecosystems across the world for tens of millions of years. Tonight he's standing motionless in the shallows, head low, watching the water. A large lungfish, perhaps 4 feet long, drifts within striking range. He moves. The strike is sudden, violent, accurate. He has the fish in his jaws. He carries it to the bank, kills it with a few more bites, and begins to eat. His scales gleam dark in the failing light. We move slowly back across the floodplain. In a patch of dense ferns at the edge of a small clearing, an armoured dinosaur is browsing in the gloaming. He is Polacanthus foxy, an early ankylosaur-line dinosaur, much smaller than the late Cretaceous Ankylosaurus we will meet later, but already heavily armoured. His back is covered in rows of bony plates and spikes, with 2 especially large spike pairs over his shoulders. His tail is long and tapering, without the great bony club that his late Cretaceous descendants will develop. He weighs perhaps 2 tons. He is slow, patient, hard to attack. Across the floodplain, in the shadows, smaller dinosaurs slip between the ferns. They are Hypsilophodon foxy, lightweight bipedal ornithopods, perhaps 6 feet long, fast on their feet, herbivorous, social, living in small flocks. They are the small fast common dinosaurs of this Cretaceous landscape, the equivalent of modern small antelopes or wallabies. They are not famous. They are not exciting in the way the great predators or the great sauropods are, but they are the bulk of the small to medium herbivore biomass in this early Cretaceous European world, and without them the larger predators, the Neovenata, the smaller theropods, could not survive. Above them all, in the warm Cretaceous evening, pterosaurs glide. They are smaller than the late Cretaceous Quetzalcoatlus, perhaps with 20-foot wingspans, but they are abundant. They are Istiodactylus, Ornithochirus, and other genera characteristic of the early Cretaceous European African coastlines. They hunt fish over the warm, shallow seas to the south. They breed on remote islands. They come and go from this floodplain in slow, drifting flights. Breathe slow. The early Cretaceous European world is a world in transition. It is more Jurassic than late Cretaceous in many of its details. The great sauropods are still here, although in declining numbers. The long-necked Cetiosauriscus and Pelorosaurus walk these floodplains, perhaps the last great sauropods of European Cretaceous time. The stegosaurs are still here in some regions, the very last representatives of their once dominant lineage. The first true ankylosaurs are appearing. The first true hadrosaur-line ornithopods are emerging from the Iguanodon-type ancestors. The first true ceratopsians, the small early Psittacosaurus types, are appearing in Asia. The world is rearranging itself, slowly, across millions of years. We are set to lift gently away from the Isle of Wight floodplain and travel briefly across the early Cretaceous to other parts of the world. In what will become northeastern China, in the early Cretaceous Yixian Formation, an extraordinary fossil deposit is forming right now in slow, accumulating lakebed mud. Volcanic ash falls, periodically, blanket entire landscapes and kill thousands of animals in a single event. The bodies sink into the soft lakebed mud. Over the next 130 million years, those bodies will be slowly compressed, mineralized, and turned into the finest dinosaur fossils anywhere in the world. The Yixian fossils, when they are finally unearthed by Chinese paleontologists in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, will reshape global paleontology. They will preserve, with extraordinary detail, the feathers of small theropod dinosaurs. They will show that feathers were not a rare innovation late in dinosaur evolution, but a widespread feature across many theropod lineages, going back at least to the early Cretaceous, probably earlier. Sinosauropteryx prima, the first feathered dinosaur formerly described from the Yixian, has clear filamentous feathers preserved along his back and tail. He's a small compsognathed theropod, perhaps 3 feet long, a fast little predator of small mammals and insects. His feathers are simple, more like fur than the complex flight feathers of modern birds, but they are unambiguously feathers. They have, in some specimens, preserved colour, rusty brown on the back, lighter on the belly, banded on the tail. Sinosauropteryx, when reconstructed from his Yixian fossils, looks rather like a small ginger and cream coloured running dinosaur, the size of a chicken with a long tail. Microraptor guy, also from the Yixian, takes feathered dinosaurs even further. He's a small dromaeosaur, perhaps 2 feet long, with 4 wings. Feathers grow not only on his forelimbs but also on his hind limbs, giving him a strange biplane-like configuration. He is almost certainly capable of gliding between trees, and possibly of short-powered flight. His feathers preserve iridescent black coloration, similar to modern crows, the first time iridescent colour has been confirmed in any extinct animal. These small Yixian theropods are not yet birds. They are still dinosaurs in the traditional sense, but they show in beautiful detail the deep feathered ancestry that will, over the next 60 million years, give rise to the true birds. Tonight, in the warm Cretaceous Chinese lakelands, the bird lineage is already taking shape. Take a deep breath. The early Cretaceous is a longer, stranger, more transitional world than the famous late Cretaceous most people picture. It contains the long, quiet evolution of the lineages that will eventually produce the tyrannosaurs, the triceratops, the great hadrosaur herds. It contains the last great sauropods of some continents. It contains the first true birds in feathered miniature. It contains the steady spread of the flowering plants. It contains the slow opening of the Atlantic Ocean and the gradual fragmenting of Gondwana. We're going to lift away from the early Cretaceous now and move forward slowly into the Middle Cretaceous, around 100 million years ago. The world here is changing. The early Cretaceous fauna is fading. The late Cretaceous fauna is beginning to take shape. We move forward, then, into the late Cretaceous. Before we step into the famous late Cretaceous of Hell Creek, we are about to walk briefly through one of the other great late Cretaceous worlds, one that very few people outside paleontology know in detail. We're going to step into the late Cretaceous of South America. South America in the late Cretaceous is an island continent. She is separated from Africa across the slowly widening South Atlantic. She is connected, intermittently, by narrow land bridges to North America in the far north. But for most of the late Cretaceous, she is essentially isolated. Her dinosaur fauna, evolving in this isolation, has gone in directions strikingly different from the North American fauna we have already met. We will lower ourselves into what will become northern Patagonia, around 95 million years ago. The landscape is broad and open. Long, slow rivers run westward across vast floodplains, draining toward what is at this time still a partially closed Proto-Pacific coast. The vegetation is mixed. Ferns, cycads, early angiosperms, scattered conifer groves. The climate is warm, semi-arid, with strong seasonal rainfall. The dominant dinosaurs here are not the same as in North America. The great hadrosaurs of the Hell Creek floodplains are absent. The tyrannosaurs are absent. The Triceratops-style ceratopsians are absent. Instead, South America has its own giants, evolved in isolation, occupying the same broad ecological roles in different anatomical forms. The largest herbivores here are the Titanosaur sauropods. These are descendants of the great Jurassic sauropods, the long-necked, four-legged plant-eaters, but they have continued to evolve into the late Cretaceous, when the sauropods of most other continents have already declined. The titanosaurs of Patagonia are the largest dinosaurs that have ever lived, and they are among the largest land animals the planet has ever produced. Argentinosaurus huinculensis, the largest of them all, is estimated at perhaps 120 feet long from snout to tail tip, weighing somewhere between 70 and 100 tons. His exact size is uncertain because his fossils are incomplete, mostly vertebrae, fragments of pelvis, a single fragmentary femur. The reconstructions are based on careful comparison with better-known relatives, but even the conservative estimates make him larger than any other terrestrial animal known from the entire fossil record. To stand near a fully grown Argentinosaurus is to stand at the foot of a moving mountain. His back is 20 feet above the ground. His neck rises another 20 feet above that. His tail stretches 40 feet behind him. His footprints, preserved in some Argentine sediments, are the size of bathtubs. Each four-limb step takes a full second. Each step shakes the ground for 100 feet around him. Tonight, in our walk, a small herd of Argentinosaurus is moving slowly across the Patagonian plain. There are perhaps 8 animals, 2 fully grown adults of immense size, 4 subadults perhaps half the adult length, 2 juveniles the size of modern elephants. They walk in a loose line, browsing as they go. They feed almost continuously. An animal this size needs nearly a ton of plant material a day, and they spend most of their waking hours stripping leaves from cycads, ferns, and the upper branches of conifers. They are slow, they are calm, they are too large to be threatened by any predator under normal circumstances. The juveniles, as the elephant-sized young ones, are at some risk. They are taken occasionally by the great theropods of this Patagonian world. But the adults, the 70-ton matriarchs and patriarchs, are essentially untouchable. The great Patagonian theropod hunting them is also extraordinary. He is Giganotosaurus carolini, perhaps 43 feet long, weighing 8 to 13 tons. He is one of the largest theropod dinosaurs that has ever lived, slightly longer than Tyrannosaurus rex by some reconstructions, although possibly not quite as heavy. He is a carcharodontosaurid, more closely related to the Jurassic Allosaurus than to the late Cretaceous tyrannosaurs of North America. His jaws are long and narrow rather than broad and crushing. His teeth are blade-like rather than the banana-sized cones of T-Rex. He kills by slashing, by ripping deep wounds in the flanks of his prey and waiting for blood loss to bring them down. He is, in his hunting style, more lion than crocodile. Tyrannosaurus rex hunts more like a crocodile. A single massive bite to the spine or skull, crushing the prey instantly. Giganotosaurus hunts more like a lion. Long pursuit, repeated slashing attacks, eventual exhaustion of the prey through blood loss. He probably hunts in small cooperative groups, perhaps siblings or mated pairs, although the social structure of carcharodontosaurids is still actively debated. Tonight, 2 Giganotosaurus, a mated pair, are stalking a group of mid-sized titanosaurs at the edge of the plain. They are not pursuing the great adults. They are watching for a juvenile or a subadult that has wandered too far from the main herd. Let the moment open. Watch them move. They are vast theropods, larger than T-Rex, but they hunt larger prey than T-Rex ever did. The South American dinosaur fauna is, in its broad strokes, scaled up from the North American fauna. The plant eaters are larger. The predators are larger. The ecosystem operates on a slightly different rhythm. There are other dinosaurs in this Patagonian world. There are smaller theropods, including the strange short-faced Abelisaur Carnotaurus sastri, perhaps 26 feet long, with extraordinarily short skull and reduced arms even smaller than those of T-Rex. Carnotaurus has 2 small horns above his eyes, which give him his name, meat-eating bull. He's a fast pursuit predator with long, powerful hind legs, hunting medium-sized herbivores across the open plains. His skin is unusually well preserved in some fossils, showing rows of large round bumps scattered across his body, suggesting a hide more like a modern crocodile's than the smaller-scaled hide of most other theropods. There are smaller herbivores, the iguanodonts and ornithopods of South America, smaller cousins of the European iguanodon and the North American hadrosaurs, but locally distinct. There are sauropods of less spectacular but still impressive size. Saltosaurus, a medium-sized titanosaur perhaps 40 feet long, has armoured bony scutes embedded in his skin, a defence against the great theropods. His nests have been found in vast colonial sites in central Argentina, where thousands of tyrannosaur eggs have been preserved, some still containing the bones of unhatched embryos. The titanosaurs nested in vast communal colonies, laying their eggs in shallow excavated pits, the heat of the buried eggs incubated by solar warmth and possibly by vegetation decay around the nest. The South American Cretaceous is a different world from the Hell Creek floodplains. It has its own logic, its own rhythms, its own apex predators and giants. It is, in the broad arc of dinosaur evolution, one of the great isolated continental experiments of the Mesozoic. We are about to lift gently away from the Patagonian plain. The Argentinosaurus herd is still browsing. The Giganotosaurus pair is still stalking the smaller titanosaurs at the perimeter. The day is fading. Above the plain, pterosaurs glide. Take a deep breath. We are going to move now to the late Cretaceous of North America, to the Hell Creek floodplain we have already partly visited, and meet the Triceratops matriarch again. The world is around 80 million years ago. The continents are still moving, but they are now arranged in something more recognizable. North America is a real continent, almost an island, split down the middle by a vast shallow inland sea, called the Western Interior Seaway. South America is its own continent, separated from Africa by the now broad South Atlantic. Africa is its own continent, with the long narrow Tethys Sea separating it from Eurasia to the north. India is mid-journey on her northward drift. Australia and Antarctica still cling together at the bottom of the world. It is in this late Cretaceous world that the great dinosaur fauna everyone knows about lives. The tyrannosaurs, the triceratopsians, the ankylosaurs, the hadrosaurs, the pachycephalosaurs. Most of the dinosaurs your books and museums celebrate come from this last 20 or 30 million years of the period. But before we step into that famous fauna, we have to honour one of the other great Cretaceous revolutions, the one that quietly remade life on land from the bottom up. We have to honour the flowering plants. For most of the history of plant life on land, from the early Devonian onward, the dominant land plants were not flowering plants. They were ferns, mosses, lycopsids, horsetails, cycads, ginkgos, and conifers. The forests of the Carboniferous, of the Permian, of the Triassic, of the Jurassic, were all dominated by these non-flowering plants. The dinosaurs of the Triassic and Jurassic walked through forests where almost no plant flowered. The colour palette of the land was overwhelmingly green and brown. Then, in the early Cretaceous, around 130 million years ago, the angiosperms, the flowering plants, began to spread. The angiosperms had originated even earlier, perhaps in the late Jurassic, but they had remained a small and inconspicuous group for tens of millions of years. In the early Cretaceous, for reasons that are still actively debated by paleobotanists, they began to diversify rapidly. By the Middle Cretaceous, they were present in all major terrestrial ecosystems. By the Late Cretaceous, they were the dominant land plants in many regions. This is one of the most consequential events in the history of life. Rest in this. Let the scale of it settle. Almost every plant in your modern world that flowers, every grass, every oak, every magnolia, every rose, every apple, every wheat, every rice, every tomato, traces its origins back to this Cretaceous radiation. The flowering plants reshaped land ecosystems in ways that still echo today, 400 million years of plant evolution culminating in the riot of colour and seed and fruit that we now take for granted. The angiosperm revolution did several things at once. It put a new kind of food, the seeds and fruits of flowering plants, into the land ecosystem, supporting new kinds of small animals, particularly seed-eating insects, small mammals, and the first true birds. It created new flower-pollinator relationships, the rise of bees, the rise of butterflies, the rise of the whole co-evolved insect-flower system that you can watch in your own garden. It introduced grasses, although the great grasslands themselves would not appear until much later in the Cenozoic. It changed the structure of forests, with the angiosperms gradually displacing the ginkgos and many cicades from their dominant niches. The dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous, the famous ones, are eating flowering plants. The hadrosaurs in particular are extraordinary at it. Their dental batteries, those massive grinding tooth arrays at the back of their mouths, are perfect for processing tough fibrous angiosperm foliage. They have evolved alongside the angiosperms across the Cretaceous, becoming the great browsing specialists of the late Cretaceous floodplains. We will step into a single late Cretaceous floodplain now to feel what this combined dinosaur and flower world looked like. We have moved forward to about 73 million years ago in what will become the late Cretaceous Lance Formation and Hell Creek Formation of the central western United States. The land here is broad and flat, with slow brown rivers winding across vast open floodplains. The western interior seaway lies to the east, perhaps 200 miles away in places, closer in others. To the west, the early Rocky Mountains are slowly rising, a long ragged line of new mountains pushing up from the colliding plates of western North America. The floodplain itself is a patchwork, open patches dominated by ferns and low-flowering plants, stands of taller flowering trees, magnolias, plane trees, sycamore-like angiosperms with large soft leaves, conifer groves of taxodium-like cypresses and araucarian pines, holdovers from the older non-flowering forests, still common but no longer dominant, cycads in some sheltered hollows, ginkgos along the riverbanks, and among the trees and ferns, the dinosaurs. Let your breath slow. We're about to step into the heart of the most famous dinosaur fauna ever to walk the earth. We are about to meet the Triceratops herd we left at the river bend in the opening, but in much more detail. We're going to meet the great Tyrannosaurus rex who hunts her kind. We will meet the duck-billed hadrosaurs, the armored ankylosaurs, the dome-headed pachycephalosaurs, the small fast theropods that thread between them all. Before we do, let your breath slow and your attention settle. We have moved a long way through the Cretaceous already. The continents have broken apart, the flowering plants have spread, the marine reptiles, which we will meet in detail in a few sections, are at the peak of their reign. The pterosaurs are reaching their largest sizes. The first true mammals are quietly diversifying in the shadows. The first true birds are testing the morning air over Cretaceous forests. And the great dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous are walking these floodplains, breathing this warm Cretaceous air, eating these flowering plants, hunting one another, raising their calves, dying their slow, patient deaths, and laying down the bones that, 80 million years from this moment, will be carefully unearthed and named and reconstructed for you to see in your own museums. Before we go any further, settle in. If this slow, calm way of wandering through deep time and the long memory of the dinosaur age helps you loosen your grip on the day, you're welcome to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening, on Spotify, on YouTube, or in your podcast app of choice. Only if this kind of careful storytelling soothes you. There is no urgency. The decision can be as unhurried as a triceratops settling into a river bend at dusk. For now, let your breath slow. The dinosaurs are sleeping. The matriarch is breathing. The walk continues. We return to the Triceratops herd at the river bend. The matriarch is still resting where we left her. The day has fully ended now. The sky is deep indigo, with the first stars beginning to sharpen out of the dusk. The air is cooler. The slow river runs almost black against the pale mud banks. The herd around her is settled in for the night. The calves are tucked close to their mothers. The young bull is still watchful at the edge. She is older than any other living thing in this immediate landscape. She's perhaps 40 years old, which is old for a Triceratops. Her great frill behind her head spans nearly 7 feet across at its widest point. It is bordered by a row of small triangular bony osteoderms, the epiccipitals, which give it the distinctive scalloped edge by which her species is recognized. Her 3 horns, the 2 long brow horns above her eyes, and the shorter nasal horn above her beak, are weapons, but they are also social signals. The exact size and curvature of her horns identifies her to other Triceratops as a particular individual of a particular age and rank. She is recognizable to them as you are recognizable to your own family. Take a deep breath. We are about to walk slowly around her now. We are going to look at her in detail. Her body is enormous. From the tip of her snout to the tip of her tail, she is nearly 30 feet long. Her weight is close to 8 tons. Her broad, short legs hold her low to the ground. Her front limbs are strongly built, slightly sprawled in the manner of a modern rhinoceros, with each foot ending in 5 short clawed toes. Her hind limbs are pillar-like, slightly longer than her forelimbs, with 4 toes on each foot. She walks with a slow, ground-shaking gait. When she runs, in rare moments of true alarm, she is faster than her bulk would suggest, perhaps as fast as a modern white rhinoceros. Her skin is patterned in a subtle, dark green and brown camouflage along her back and flanks, fading to paler yellow-brown on her belly. We are honest in saying that the exact coloration is inference. The skin of the Triceratops is poorly preserved in the fossil record. What we have are impressions of scaly hide, some preserved in mudstones along with bones, which suggest a body covered in small rounded scales with scattered larger flat scales along the back and tail. The colour pattern we have given her tonight is an honest inference from her likely role as a large, slow, ground-dwelling herbivore in a temperate forest environment. She was probably countershaded and camouflaged. The exact shades of green and brown are our best informed imagination. Her head is enormous. The skull of a fully grown Triceratops can be more than 7 feet long, the largest skull of any land animal that has ever lived. Most of this length is in the frill, the great bony shield that rises behind her actual head. The frill is solid bone in Triceratops, unlike many of her ceratopsian relatives whose frills had fenestrae, holes covered by skin and muscle. The solid frill is heavy, but it provides strong attachment points for her powerful jaw muscles and gives her a large surface for display and species recognition. Her beak is sharp and parrot-like, designed for cropping tough fibrous plants. Behind the beak, her cheeks contain a great dental battery of hundreds of small teeth packed into a continuously replacing grinding surface. She can process the toughest cycad fronds, the most fibrous fern stems, the hardest seed pods. Her diet, in the late Cretaceous lance formation, has been reconstructed by careful study of her teeth and the contents of preserved coprolites, fossilized feces, found alongside Triceratops bones. She eats ferns, cycads, palm fronds where she can find them, the tough older leaves of conifers and angiosperms. She is, in modern terms, a low-browsing bulk feeder. We will step back from her and look at the herd as a whole. Triceratops, as a species, is one of the better understood late Cretaceous dinosaurs, partly because her bones are abundant, and partly because her remains span a relatively well-defined window of time and space, the last few million years of the Cretaceous in western North America. She lived in herds of perhaps a dozen to a few dozen animals, judging from the bone beds where multiple individuals are found together. Whether these herds were stable groups like modern elephant herds or temporary aggregations like some modern bison is still actively debated. The herd we are watching tonight is a small stable family group, with the matriarch as its leader and several younger females and their offspring. The young bull at the edge is one of last year's calves, just reaching the age where he will eventually leave the herd to wander as a solitary subadult before, in a few years, perhaps attaching himself to another herd as a breeding bull, or perhaps trying to displace one of the dominant bulls of a rival herd. The herd's life is slow. They feed for most of the day, walking from one patch of forage to another. They drink at the river twice a day, morning and evening. They rest at midday in shade when they can find it. They sleep all together in chosen safe spots near water, usually for only short stretches at a time, the matriarch or another adult always alert. They live, when they live well, for perhaps 30 to 40 years. They are not unthreatened. There is one predator in this landscape large enough to take an adult Triceratops, and tonight, somewhere in the warm Cretaceous dusk, perhaps a mile from where this herd is bedded down, he is moving. He is Tyrannosaurus rex. We are going to walk away from the herd now, leaving the matriarch and her family to their patient, quiet evening. We are set to step out across the floodplain, west, away from the river, into a stretch of more open ground where ferns grow knee-high and scattered tall conifers cast long evening shadows. Here, moving carefully through the ferns, is the king of the late Cretaceous. He's a fully grown male Tyrannosaurus rex, perhaps 18 years old, perhaps 20. From the tip of his snout to the tip of his tail, he's 40 feet long. He stands 12 feet tall at the hip. He weighs close to 8 tons, similar to the matriarch Triceratops we have just left, but built very differently. Where she's a low-slung quadruped, he's a tall biped, walking on his enormous hind legs with his body held horizontal, his long tail counterbalancing his massive head and shoulders behind him. His head is the most extraordinary structure in his body. His skull is 5 feet long, his jaws are lined with teeth the size of bananas, conical at the base, blade-like at the tip with serrated edges for shearing flesh. His bite force, when his jaws close, is somewhere between 35,000 and 57,000 newtons at the back teeth, the most powerful bite force of any land animal that has ever lived, several times stronger than any modern crocodile, more than 10 times stronger than a modern lion. He can crush bone, he can shear muscle, he can take down prey that would defeat any other terrestrial predator the earth has ever produced. Tonight, in our walk, he is hunting. He's moving slowly through the ferns, head low, body relaxed. He's not yet committed to a particular prey. He is scenting the air. His nostrils, which are large and well separated on his snout, give him an excellent sense of smell. His vision, judging from the size and forward-facing position of his eyes, is also excellent, with the same kind of binocular depth perception you have. He can probably distinguish the silhouette of a Triceratops from that of a hadrosaur at a quarter of a mile, even in failing light. He hears the Triceratops herd before he sees them, the slow breathing of the matriarch, the occasional low rumble of contentment that the cows make as they settle for the night, the soft shifting of the calves. He turns his great head toward the sound. He begins to move in that direction, slowly, carefully, not yet committing. He is one of the great Cretaceous predators. He is also a careful and intelligent hunter. He does not attack at full speed unless he is sure of his prey. A wounded Triceratops, with her horns and her bulk, could kill him in a moment. He has, in his 18 years of life, seen this happen to other tyrannosaurs. He has watched them die from horn wounds in the ribs, from crushed legs after a missed strike, from infections in old gashes that never quite healed. He is, in his own way, a skeptic of the easy meal. He will watch this herd for hours tonight, looking for the weakest, the youngest, the most isolated. He may move on without attacking, if no opportunity presents itself. He may circle and try again in the morning. He may attack the matriarch directly if she has, unbeknown to him, developed a slight limp that has slowed her response time. He is patient, he is hungry, but he is not desperate. There is enough prey in this landscape, hadrosaurs, smaller ceratopsians, the occasional Edmontosaurus herd, that he can afford to choose carefully. Hold the moment lightly. Let the modern world fade away. Sit with him for a moment. He is one of the most extraordinary animals the planet has ever produced. He is the apex of an entire branch of vertebrate evolution. He is alone in this corner of his world, although elsewhere in this same landscape, There are other tyrannosaurs, his rivals, who hold their own overlapping territories. He has bred with several females in his lifetime. He may have offspring out there, somewhere, growing up under the patient watch of their mothers in the forest fringes. He stops. He has decided not to attack tonight. The herd is too well organized. The matriarch is too obviously alert. He turns and walks slowly away from them, back through the ferns, looking for a more favorable opportunity. We let him go. We turn back toward the river. We will stay with the Tyrannosaurus Rex a little longer. He's still moving through the ferns. The night has thickened around him. The matriarch Triceratops and her herd are sleeping perhaps half a mile away downwind, unaware of his presence in this exact moment, but generally vigilant. We're going to walk slowly alongside him as he hunts, because Tyrannosaurus Rex is one of the most thoroughly studied dinosaurs ever to have walked the earth, and his hunting behavior, his life history, his social structure, his ecology have been reconstructed in remarkable detail over the past century of careful paleontology. We owe him a longer look. His body as we walk beside him is enormous. He is, as we have already mentioned, 40 feet long and 8 tons. But the scale of him is hard to grasp from numbers alone. Imagine a city bus standing on its hind legs. Imagine a small school bus with a head and teeth. He is that big. His hip stands 12 feet above the ground. His head, held forward on his short, powerful neck, towers 5 feet above his hip. Each of his footprints is over 3 feet long. He leaves them in soft mud across the Hell Creek floodplain, where, 66 million years from this moment, they will sometimes be discovered as trackways by careful paleontologists. We can tell from the spacing of preserved trackways that he walks, normally at about 3 to 5 miles per hour. He can charge at perhaps 20 miles per hour in short bursts. He is not the fastest theropod of the Cretaceous, but he is fast enough to catch the larger herbivores he hunts, and his charge is irresistible at close range. His arms are famously small. Each of his forelimbs is only about 3 feet long, ending in 2 small clawed fingers. The function of these tiny arms has been debated by paleontologists for over a century. They are too small and held too close to the body to reach his mouth, so they cannot be used to bring food to his face. They are not, on careful biomechanical analysis, suited for grasping prey during a strike. Some researchers have suggested they were vestigial, gradually being lost across his lineage. Other researchers have suggested they had specific niche functions, helping him push up off the ground when rising from a prone position, gripping a mating partner during copulation, supporting him during feeding when he tore at a carcass. The most recent honest answer is that we are not sure. They were probably useful for something since they did not disappear entirely, but their exact function remains uncertain. His jaws and teeth are what define him. His jaws are, by some measures, the most powerful biological weapon any land animal has ever evolved. The combined bite force of his upper and lower teeth at the back of his mouth is somewhere between 35,000 and 57,000 newtons. To give you a sense of scale, a modern lion's bite force is about 4,000 newtons, a modern crocodile's around 16,000. T-Rexes 10 to 15 times stronger than the lions, 3 to 4 times stronger than the crocodiles. His teeth are designed for this. Each tooth is conical at the base, blade-like at the tip, with serrated edges that work like the teeth of a steak knife. They are designed to crush bone, to puncture deep into flesh, to shear muscle. He can bite through a Triceratops femur. He can bite the tail off a fully grown hadrosaur. He can puncture armor-plated ankylosaur skin given the right angle. He has in fact been observed to do all of these things in the fossil record. There are Triceratops bones with deep T, Rex tooth grooves on them, including some with healed tooth marks indicating the Triceratops survived the encounter. There are Edmontosaurus tail vertebrae with bitten-off ends, in some cases healed over, again indicating survival. There are ankylosaur bones with T-Rex bite marks. He preyed on essentially everything large in his ecosystem, with varying degrees of success. He is also a scavenger. There is a long-running debate in paleontology, going back to Jack Horner's controversial 1990s argument about whether T-Rex was a pure hunter, a pure scavenger, or both. The current consensus is firmly that he was both. He hunted when opportunity allowed. He scavenged when it did not. His sense of smell, judging from the size of his olfactory bulbs in the brain, was excellent, equivalent in scale terms to a modern vulture or large bear. He could detect carrion from many miles away. He almost certainly drove smaller predators off kills, taking them for himself, just as modern bears and lions do. His life history is also relatively well understood. He hatched from an egg the size of a small football. As a young animal, perhaps the size of a large dog, he was fast, gangly, with relatively long legs and a small head. He hunted small prey, perhaps fled from his own adult relatives. As a juvenile in his teen years, he transformed dramatically. His head broadened, his legs shortened relative to his body, his bite force grew exponentially. By his late teens, he was approaching adult size. He reached full adult size by perhaps his early 20s. He probably lived in the best cases to perhaps 30 years old. Few Tyrannosaurus skeletons show signs of being much older than this. He died, typically, of one of three things: injuries sustained during hunting. Broken legs, especially, were nearly always fatal because a flightless 8-ton biped cannot hunt or compete on 3 legs. Infections from old wounds, or eventually old age and slow loss of hunting ability. The most famous individual T-Rex specimens in the world give us windows into specific lives. Sioux, the largest and most complete T-Rex skeleton ever found, was excavated in 1990 from South Dakota and is now displayed at the Field Museum in Chicago. She's 42 feet long, about 28 years old at death, and she shows extensive evidence of injuries. A broken arm that healed, multiple bite marks on her skull, probably from intraspecific combat with other T-Rex, and signs of severe arthritis in her tail and one of her hind legs. She lived a long, hard life. She was, at the end, partly disabled by her injuries. Stan, another famous specimen excavated in 1992, shows similarly dramatic life history evidence. His skull has a deep round puncture, the size and shape of another T-Rex's tooth, which had healed over. He had survived a fight with a rival. His ribs show old healed breaks. Trix, displayed in the Naturalist Biodiversity Centre in Leiden in the Netherlands, was excavated in 2013 from Montana. She too has multiple healed injuries, including a damaged jawbone and several broken and healed ribs. These individuals lived, they fought, they survived attacks, injuries, illnesses, they eventually died. Their skeletons preserve in subtle detail the records of their individual lives. We can know more about them than we can about most extinct animals. Tonight, in our walk, the T-Rex we are following has his own life story written into his bones. We cannot see it, of course, here in the failing light, but it is there. Old scars, old breaks, the slight stiffness in his lower back from an old injury, the slight asymmetry in his jaw from another. He is, like Sue and Stan and Trix, an individual. He has a life. He has experiences. He's hunting tonight because he is hungry. He fed 3 days ago on a juvenile hadrosaur he caught near a riverbank, but most of that meal has been processed and is now gone. He needs another large meal soon. He is, in his patient predator way, looking for the right opportunity. He moves slowly through the ferns. He listens. He sniffs the air. The wind is shifting slightly. He turns his head, considering. In the deeper darkness to the north, perhaps a quarter of a mile away, he hears something. A faint sound, the low rumbling distress call of a hadrosaur in pain. He listens, head cocked. Another rumble. The call repeats, slightly weaker. A hadrosaur is dying somewhere up there. Maybe she was attacked by another predator earlier in the evening, fled into the deeper marsh, and is now slowly bleeding out. Maybe she has stepped wrong and broken her leg, and is now stranded in the mud. The specific cause does not matter to him. He registers the sound. He turns toward it. He begins to move north, slowly picking up the pace. He's not running. He does not need to. A dying hadrosaur is not going anywhere. He has all the time he needs to walk calmly through the dark Cretaceous floodplain toward his evening meal. We follow him. The sky's fully dark now. The stars are bright. The slow river runs to our right. The marsh stretches to our left. The ferns sway slightly in the cool night breeze. He arrives at the marsh. He pauses at the edge. He listens again. The hadrosaur is no longer calling. She has either lost consciousness or died. He waits, patient as a stone, scanning the dark marsh with his huge eyes. A flicker of movement in the moonlight. He sees her, a fully grown female Edmontosaurus, lying on her side perhaps 50 feet out in the marsh. Her flank is dark with blood. She has been attacked. She is not yet dead, but she is dying. Her sides rise and fall in shallow, rapid breaths. She does not move otherwise. He steps into the marsh. The water is shallow, the mud soft. He moves with deliberate slowness, conserving energy, watching the surrounding darkness for the predator that attacked her in the first place. There may be another T-Rex out here. There may be a pack of smaller dromaeosaurs. He is the largest predator in this ecosystem, but he is not invulnerable. He reaches her. He stands over her for a long moment. She is barely breathing. Her great dark eye is half open, glazed, unfocused. She is not registering him. He bites. The strike, when it comes, is precise and merciful. He takes her at the back of the neck, his enormous jaws crushing her vertebrae and severing her spinal cord. She dies in the same second. He has, in the language of predation, finished what someone else started. He begins to feed. He eats from her flank first, tearing massive chunks of muscle from her body. The Cretaceous night fills with the sounds of his feeding, the wet shearing of his teeth through flesh, the heavy thud of his jaw closing on bone, the deep guttural breathing of a satisfied predator who has not eaten in 3 days. He will eat for an hour, perhaps 2. He will consume perhaps 300 pounds of meat in this single feeding. He will leave most of the carcass behind for the smaller scavengers, the small dromaeosaurs, the smaller crocodiles, the early mammals, the carrion-eating birds and pterosaurs, to clean up over the next several days. By next week, the bones will be picked clean. By next month, the bones themselves will be partly buried in soft sediment. By next year, they may be fully buried, beginning their slow journey toward fossilization. 66 million years from this moment, in this exact spot, those bones may be discovered by a paleontologist working the Hell Creek Formation outcrops. The Edmontosaurus skeleton will be excavated, prepared, and displayed. The story of how she died will be partly readable in her bones, the bite marks from the first predator that attacked her, the much larger bite mark on her vertebrae from the T-Rex who finished her, the forensic story of one Cretaceous night, preserved across deep time. But we're not thinking about that tonight. Tonight the T-Rex is feeding, the Edmontosaurus is dead, the Cretaceous moon is rising, the river runs slow, the matriarch Triceratops half a mile away sleeps unaware. We leave him to his meal. Take a deep breath. Let the weight of the scene settle. He is not, in any moral sense, evil. He is a Cretaceous predator doing what Cretaceous predators do. The Edmontosaurus has not been wasted. Her body is feeding him. We'll feed many other animals over the coming weeks. We'll eventually feed the soil itself, and through the soil, the plants that other dinosaurs will graze. Energy flows through this ecosystem in long, slow, patient cycles. T-Rex is part of those cycles. So is the Edmontosaurus. So is the marsh. So is the river. So is the slow drift of the continents, and the slow change of the climate. Nothing here is happening for the first time. The same patterns of life and death have been playing out across these Cretaceous floodplains for tens of millions of years. They will continue in their own slow rhythm for another 7 million years or so. Then the asteroid will arrive and the patterns will be broken, and new patterns will slowly form in the world that follows. For tonight, the patterns are intact. The T-Rex feeds, the Edmontosaurus rests at last, the Triceratops sleeps, the river runs. We move on. We are set to step further across the floodplain now to meet other dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous. Along the far side of the river, in a wide stretch of open marsh, a herd of duck-billed hadrosaurs is feeding in the last of the light. They are Edmontosaurus annectens, one of the most abundant hadrosaurs of the very latest Cretaceous, found in vast numbers in the Hell Creek and Lance Formation fossil beds. They walk on their hind legs, although they can drop to all fours when grazing close to the ground or when traversing soft mud. Their broad, flat, duck-like bills are designed for cropping plants, particularly the tough fibrous angiosperm foliage that has come to dominate these floodplains. Each Edmontosaurus is perhaps 40 feet long, weighing about 4 tons. Their dental batteries are extraordinary, hundreds of teeth packed into continuously growing grinding surfaces, similar in principle to the Triceratops dental battery, but specialized for slightly different plants. They process tough cycad, fern, and angiosperm foliage with patient efficiency. The herd we are watching is perhaps 100 animals strong. Edmontosaurus is a more social dinosaur than Triceratops, often found in very large herds. The 100 individuals tonight are mostly females, with calves and juveniles scattered among them, and a few young bulls at the periphery. The dominant breeding bulls have probably moved off separately during this part of the year, returning seasonally during the breeding moves. They feed in long, slow lines, working their way across the marsh, cropping ferns and the soft leaves of low-growing angiosperms. They communicate constantly, low rumbling calls that carry across the marsh, soft snorts of contentment, occasional warning honks when a smaller predator, a small theropod, perhaps a Dakotaraptor, is sighted at the edge of the marsh. We will follow them for a while. They are calm. They are unbothered by our invisible presence. They feed steadily, swallowing huge mouthfuls of soft plant matter, processing it through their grinding teeth, swallowing again. They lift their heads at irregular intervals to look around, to check the perimeter, to communicate with each other. Hadrosaurs like Edmontosaurus are, in modern reconstructions, often considered the most successful of all the late Cretaceous dinosaurs in terms of sheer numbers and biomass. They were the bulk consumers of plant material across the Cretaceous floodplains. Their herds were vast. Their dental adaptations let them process plants that other large dinosaurs could not efficiently digest. They were, in their own way, the wildebeest of the Cretaceous. We are going to leave them and travel further along the floodplain. In the deeper marshes, where the river widens into braided channels and shallow ponds, smaller groups of other hadrosaur species feed. There are Anatotitan, similar to Edmontosaurus but slightly larger in some reconstructions, and now considered by many paleontologists to be the same animal at a different growth stage. There are the slightly older crested hadrosaurs, Lambeosaurans, further west and north, with their elaborate hollow cranial crests that may have served as resonant chambers for low-frequency calls. Parasaurolophus, with his long, backward-curving tubular crest, lived perhaps 10 million years earlier than the Hell Creek Edmontosaurus we are watching tonight, and his bones are not found in this exact formation. We mention him because he is so famous, but he is not strictly part of this Hell Creek scene. In the drier patches of the floodplain where the soil is firmer, we see a different family of dinosaurs. They are the armored ankylosaurs. They are heavily built quadrupeds, low to the ground, with their backs covered in elaborate patterns of bony plates and spikes, called osteoderms. Some species end their tails in massive bony clubs. The largest ankylosaur in this Cretaceous late stretch is Ankylosaurus magniventris, perhaps 25 feet long, 4 tons in weight. He is essentially a walking armoured tank. His back, sides, and even the top of his head are covered in fused bony plates. His tail ends in a bony club the size of a beach ball. He's largely a slow plant eater, cropping low ferns and angiosperms with his broad beak, and processing them with his small grinding teeth. He's one of the most heavily armoured land animals that has ever lived. His armour is so effective that even a Tyrannosaurus has trouble with him. The plates on his back are too thick to bite through. His underside, the only vulnerable part of his body, is hard to reach because he holds himself so low to the ground. His tail club, swung with surprising power and accuracy, can break the leg of an attacking Tyrannosaurus with a single blow. There are fossils of Tyrannosaurus bones with ankylosaur club-shaped breaks in them. We watch a single ankylosaurus moving slowly across a patch of dry red ground, scuffing through ferns. He is the most armoured animal we have met tonight. He moves with the patient confidence of a creature who has very little to fear. We are set to stay on the Hell Creek floodplain a little longer before we return to the matriarch. There are other late Cretaceous dinosaur behaviours we have not yet honoured tonight, and the night is still long. In a clearing perhaps a mile from the river, in the deep moonlit shadows of a stand of bald cypress conifers, 2 adult bull Triceratops are circling each other. It is the breeding season, and they are rival bulls competing for the right to access a herd of cows that is currently grazing some way off in the next clearing. They have postured at each other for the past hour, slowly approaching from opposite ends of the small open ground, displaying their frills, lowering their horns toward each other in clear threat signals. Neither has yet backed down. Now they are within 15 feet of each other, breathing hard, eyes locked. This is a real Triceratops behaviour, by the way. Triceratops skulls from the Hell Creek Formation show, with surprising frequency, healed wounds that match the size and shape of other Triceratops horns. Bull Triceratops fought each other, head to head, in dominance contests. The horns were not just for defence against predators, they were also social weapons used in intraspecific combat. We watch the 2 bulls, the smaller of them, perhaps a younger animal challenging an older established bull, makes the first charge. He lowers his head and drives forward. His horns connect with the older bull's horns in a sharp, crashing impact. The 2 animals brace against each other, heads locked, pushing. This is the moment in any horn-using ungulate combat where the stronger animal slowly overpowers the weaker. The older bull, who has done this many times before, knows how to apply leverage. He twists his head, attempting to flip the younger bull off balance. The younger bull resists. They push against each other for nearly a full minute, neither giving way. Finally, the younger bull breaks. He releases the lock, steps back, and the older bull immediately drives forward to press the advantage. The younger bull retreats. He has not been seriously wounded, his horns have absorbed the impact well, but he has been defeated. He turns and trots off into the moonlit forest, head low in submission. The older bull watches him go. He waits, breathing hard until the younger bull is well clear. Then he turns and walks slowly back toward the herd of cows. He has earned his right to remain the dominant breeding bull for another season. Pause briefly. Triceratops bulls fight each other. They have done so in the same way for hundreds of thousands of generations. The horns are designed for it. The frill, at least in part, is designed for it, as a display surface and as a passive defense during head-to-head combat. The cows in the next clearing will mate with whichever bull holds dominance through the breeding season. The genes that make for successful combat are passed on. The lineage continues. We move on. In another clearing, this one near a slow side channel of the river, a group of Pachycephalosaurus is doing something similar. They are smaller dinosaurs than Triceratops, perhaps 15 feet long, with the famous thickened bone domes on top of their heads. 3 young bulls are circling each other in the moonlight. The exact function of the dome on a Pachycephalosaurus skull was debated for decades. Some paleontologists argued it was for head-to-head ramming, like modern bighorn sheep. Other paleontologists argued it was too dome-shaped, and the angle of impact too risky for ramming, and that the dome was used for flank butting or for visual display. The debate has not been completely resolved. but the current consensus, based on detailed analysis of healed cranial injuries in Pachycephalosaurus skulls, tilts toward headbutting, or at least head-to-flank butting, as a real behaviour. The 3 young bulls we're watching tonight are practising. They are not yet old enough to claim breeding rights. They are essentially adolescents, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, working out their relative ranks through ritualized combat. 2 of them face off and run at each other. They hit head to head. The dome bones absorb the impact with surprising resilience. They stagger backward, shake their heads, and back away. The 3rd bull joins in. Now all 3 are circling, posturing, occasionally clashing. They will continue this for hours tonight, and on many future nights, until they reach full size and begin to compete seriously for breeding access. The youngest of them will probably never become dominant. He will live as a subordinate male, getting occasional opportunities to mate, but never holding territory. The other 2 have better chances. We move on. Down in the marsh, where the Edmontosaurus herd we visited earlier is bedded down for the night, a different kind of social behaviour is unfolding. One of the older females is in the process of giving birth. She has separated herself slightly from the main herd. She's lying in a soft patch of mud, eyes half closed, body trembling. Her water broke an hour ago. The contractions are coming closer together now. Another adult female, perhaps her sister, perhaps her daughter from a previous year, is standing nearby, watching, attentive but not intervening. Hadrosaurs are believed to give live birth from large pre-yolked eggs, with the eggs hatching almost immediately after laying. This is somewhat speculative. We do not have direct preservation of hadrosaur birthing events, but the pattern of multiple juveniles found together with adult skeletons and the well-established nest structures of related hadrosaur species like Maiasaura suggest a colonial nesting strategy with extended parental care. Tonight in our walk, the mother Edmontosaurus is about to lay a clutch of perhaps a dozen eggs. She shifts position. The first egg appears, she breathes hard, another egg, another. Across the next half hour, she lays her full clutch into a shallow depression she has scraped out earlier in the day with her hind feet. She arranges them carefully with her snout. She lies down beside them, curls around them protectively. The nearby attendant female moves slightly closer. She will help guard the nest through the night. The 2 adult females form a small protective ring around the eggs. This is not unlike modern bird brooding behaviour. Hadrosaurs were, in many of their ecological habits, similar to modern large flightless birds. They lived in colonial nesting groups. They cared for their young. They formed long-term social bonds. Some paleontologists have suggested that the elaborate cranial crests of crested hadrosaur species like Parasaurolophus were used for low-frequency social calls between herd members, much as modern elephants use low-frequency calls. The acoustics of fossil crests, modelled by careful researchers like David Weiss-Hampel in the 1980s and refined since, suggest that hadrosaurs were one of the most acoustically rich dinosaur groups in the Cretaceous. Take a deep breath. The mother Edmontosaurus is curled around her clutch. The attendant female stands guard. The eggs lie warm in their shallow nest. Tomorrow morning they will begin to hatch. The new generation of Edmontosaurus calves will emerge into the late Cretaceous world. We move on. In a quiet stand of fern beyond the marsh, 2 Ankylosaurus are encountering each other. They are not in combat. They are not in competition. They are passing each other, 2 large armoured tanks crossing paths in the moonlit forest, acknowledging each other with low, huffing breaths, and then continuing on their separate ways. Ankylosaurus, despite his armour, was probably a relatively solitary dinosaur. He did not form herds. He did not have complex social interactions. He grazed alone, slept alone, lived alone. The 2 animals tonight are just passing through. They have no reason to engage with each other, but there is something quietly moving in watching them do this. 2 of the most extraordinarily armoured land animals that have ever lived, crossing paths in a silent Cretaceous forest, neither fearing the other, neither caring about the other, each going about his own quiet, patient life. We watch them disappear into the moonlit trees. We move on, back through the marsh, back across the floodplain, back toward the matriarch's river bend. She's still asleep. The herd is still bedded down around her. The river runs slow and dark. The Cretaceous moon is now beginning to set in the west, its light tinting the river silver where its beams catch the slow current. The night is more than half gone. We move on. In the conifer groves at the edge of the marsh, smaller dinosaurs slip between the trees. They are pachycephalosaurs, the dome-headed dinosaurs. The largest, Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis, is perhaps 15 feet long, walking on his hind legs, with a thick dome of solid bone forming the top of his skull. The dome can be more than 10 inches thick. It is used, almost certainly, in head-to-head combat between males during the breeding season, much like modern bighorn sheep ram heads in their own combat displays. Pachycephalosaurs are surprisingly poorly preserved as fossils, because their skulls, being so dense, often survive long after the rest of the skeleton has weathered away. What we have are mostly skull caps, often beautifully preserved, with the rest of the body reconstructed from a small number of partial skeletons. We do not, in honesty, fully understand what Pachycephalosaurus looked like in life. Our tonight version, walking carefully through the conifer grove, is a careful reconstruction based on the limited evidence we have. There is uncertainty here, we're honest about it. We will lift gently up from the Hell Creek floodplain and travel west, across the Pacific, to the other Great Late Cretaceous fossil-producing region in the world. We're going to step into Central Asia, into what will become the Mongolian Gobi Desert, around 75 million years ago. The Gobi region in the late Cretaceous is not a desert. The full aridification of Central Asia is still tens of millions of years in the future, but it is already a relatively dry, sandy landscape, semi-arid, with seasonal monsoon rainfall, scattered shallow lakes, and slow drifting sand dunes interspersed with scrub vegetation. The climate is closer to a modern North African or southwestern North American semi-desert than to the wet floodplains of Hell Creek. The dinosaur fauna of this Cretaceous Mongolia is, like the South American fauna, distinct from the North American fauna. It has its own assemblages, its own apex predators, its own characteristic forms, and thanks to the dry conditions and the sandy soils that occasionally bury entire animals alive, in collapsing dunes during sandstorms, it preserves dinosaurs in extraordinary postures, sometimes caught in the very act of behaviour. The Gobi has given paleontology some of the most famous and emotionally arresting fossil specimens in the world. We are set to lower ourselves into a single Gobi evening. The sun is sinking, the light is the burnt orange of late dusk, sand dunes catch the last of the light along their crests, scrub vegetation casts long shadows, the air is hot and dry. A small flock of Protoceratops andrewsi is feeding in a patch of scrub at the edge of a low dune. Protoceratops is a small early ceratopsian, perhaps 6 feet long, weighing about 400 pounds. He looks something like a small sheep-sized version of Triceratops, although without the long brow horns and with only a small unfused frill behind his head. He walks on all fours. He grazes on the tough fibrous plants of the Gobi scrub. He lives in small social groups, perhaps 20 animals strong. Tonight, the flock is feeding peacefully. The adults graze. The juveniles play in the cooler sand at the base of the dune. The young of Protoceratops are known from spectacular preserved nests, with multiple juveniles found together, suggesting prolonged parental care. But this evening, something is wrong. A predator is approaching. He's moving low through the scrub, body close to the ground, head and tail held in horizontal balance. He is fast, lightweight, lethal. He is Velociraptor mongoliensis, soft and slow. Watch him carefully. This is the real Velociraptor, not the human-sized Jurassic Park version. The real Velociraptor is small. He is perhaps 6 feet long from snout to tail tip, but most of that length is in his slender tail. His body is the size of a large turkey. He weighs about 30 pounds. He is covered in feathers. We are certain of this. Quill knobs on his forearm bones, discovered in the early 21st century by the paleontologist Alan Turner and his colleagues, show clearly that he had long, stiff feathers along his arms, almost certainly arranged in the same wing-like array as a modern bird. His body was covered in down. His tail had a fan of long feathers at the tip. He looked, in life, almost exactly like a 6-foot-long crow, with a long tail and a mouthful of teeth. His head is small, with a long pointed snout and many sharp small teeth. His arms are relatively long, ending in 3-fingered hands with sharp curving claws. His feet are his most distinctive feature. Each foot has 4 toes, of which the second toe is enlarged, raised off the ground, and bears a long, curving, sickle-shaped claw, sometimes called the killing claw. The claw is held off the ground during normal walking so that it stays sharp. During an attack, the claw is driven into the prey with the full weight of the dinosaur behind it. Velociraptor is fast. He can run at perhaps 30 miles per hour over short distances. He is intelligent by dinosaur standards. His brain case is relatively large, suggesting good neural processing for hunting decisions. He hunts alone or in small groups. He is, in many ways, the closest thing in this Cretaceous world to a small, fast-feathered cat. Ambush predator, opportunistic, dangerous. He is hunting a Protoceratops tonight. He has chosen a young animal at the edge of the flock, perhaps 2 years old, just reaching adolescence, larger than the juveniles but smaller and less experienced than the adults. The young Protoceratops is grazing slightly apart from the rest of the flock, having wandered 10 feet beyond the main feeding line. Velociraptor is patient. He's moving slowly, downwind, using the scrub as cover. He freezes for long moments when the young Protoceratops looks up. He moves only when the small ceratopsian's head goes down to feed again. The strike, when it comes, is sudden and ferocious. Velociraptor breaks from cover at full speed, covering the last 10 feet in less than a second. He lands on the Protoceratops's back, driving his sickle claws into the young animal's flanks. The Protoceratops bellows in pain and panic. The flock scatters. But the young Protoceratops is not defenseless. He may be a juvenile, but he has the strong beak and the muscular jaw of his lineage. He twists, throws Velociraptor off his back. They face each other. The Protoceratops snaps at Velociraptor with his beak. Velociraptor strikes at the Protoceratops' neck with his claws. This is, in fact, a real moment that has been preserved in the fossil record. In the late 1970s, in the Mongolian Gobi, a joint Polish-Mongolian paleontological expedition discovered an extraordinary fossil. 2 complete skeletons, locked together in combat. A Velociraptor with 1 foot, sickle claw extended, embedded in the throat of a Protoceratops. The Protoceratops's beak clamped tightly around the Velociraptor's right arm, having shattered the bones. They had killed each other. The Protoceratops's bite had crushed the Velociraptor's arm and probably caused him to bleed to death. The Velociraptor's claw had punctured the Protoceratops's jugular and probably killed him at the same time. And then, almost certainly, a sand dune had collapsed on them mid-fight in a sudden Cretaceous sandstorm, burying them both alive while still locked in their combat. They had stayed there, frozen in the very moment of dying together, for 75 million years. When the Polish paleontologist Halska Osmolska and her colleagues first uncovered the joined skeletons, they recognized at once what they were seeing. The specimen is now displayed in the Mongolian State Museum, and it is one of the most famous and emotionally arresting fossils in the world. It is sometimes called simply the fighting dinosaurs. Tonight in our walk, this same combat is taking place. The Velociraptor's claw is in the Protoceratops's throat. The Protoceratops's beak is around the Velociraptor's arm. They are dying together. In the distance, the wind is picking up. The sand dunes are beginning to shift. A sandstorm is coming, perhaps in the next hour. The 2 dinosaurs will not survive the night. Take a deep breath. Hold the moment lightly. They are still alive here in your imagination, locked in their final fight. 75 million years from this moment, they will be uncovered together by careful human hands. They will be preserved together in a museum. Schoolchildren and paleontologists alike will stand in front of their joined skeletons and feel the weight of what they are seeing. 2 animals, 2 species, one quiet, violent moment, preserved across deep time. We leave them. We must. In another part of the Gobi, a different fossil-making moment is also taking place. A small theropod called Oviraptor Velociraptor is sitting on a nest of eggs. Her body is curled over them, her feathered forearms spread protectively across the clutch. She is brooding, just as modern birds brood. The Gobi is dry, and the temperature swings hard between day and night, and her body heat is keeping the eggs warm. A sandstorm hits her too. She refuses to leave her nest. She is buried alive. 75 million years from this evening, paleontologists will uncover her, still in her brooding posture, still curled over her eggs. The fossil will be one of the strongest pieces of evidence ever found for active parental care in theropod dinosaurs, and one of the strongest behavioural links between non-avian dinosaurs and modern birds. These small intimate moments are preserved across the Gobi sediments. We have, here, dinosaurs preserved in the very act of hunting, fighting, brooding, dying. The Gobi is one of the most extraordinary paleontological landscapes in the world. We are going to lift away from the Gobi now and return to North America. The sun is fully down. The fighting Velociraptor and Protoceratops are still locked together in their last moment. The brooding Oviraptor is still curled over her eggs. The sandstorm is approaching from the west. They are all about to be buried, and to remain buried for 75 million years. Let your breath slow. Let the weight of that settle gently. There is something deeply moving about animals preserved in mid-action across deep time. They were doing ordinary things, hunting and brooding and grazing on an ordinary evening. They had no idea what was about to happen to them. They had no idea that they would be the only specimens of their kind ever found. Tonight, in your imagination, they are still alive. The Velociraptor is still fighting. The Oviraptor is still brooding. The Protoceratops flock is still scattered across the dunes in the failing light. We carry them with us as we travel back across the Pacific, back to the Hell Creek floodplains where the Triceratops matriarch is still resting at her river bend. We move further out, across the floodplain. Above us, in the warm Cretaceous evening sky, the pterosaurs glide. They're no longer the small Triassic and Jurassic forms we have walked through in earlier episodes. The pterosaurs of the late Cretaceous are giants. The largest, Quetzalcoatlus northropi, has a wingspan of nearly 40 feet. He is the largest flying animal that has ever lived. He is so large that some paleontologists, when his bones were first reconstructed in the 1970s, doubted that he could fly at all. Subsequent careful analysis of his wing structure and his muscle attachments, however, has confirmed that he was indeed capable of powered flight, although he probably spent much of his time soaring on thermals like a giant condor. He is, in body plan, a giraffe-headed pterosaur. His long, thin neck holds his head, with its long, pointed beak, high above his shoulders. His body is relatively small. His wings, when folded against his sides, can be tucked away neatly so that he can walk on land on his 4 limbs, the 2 hind limbs and the 2 folded wing forelimbs. On the ground, he stands as tall as a giraffe. In the air, his wingspan blocks out the sky like a small aircraft. What does Quetzalcoatlus eat? This is still debated. Older reconstruction suggested he was a fish-eater, swooping over coastal waters to snatch fish from the surface, but newer analyses suggest he is more likely a stalk-and-strike land predator, walking carefully across open plains and using his long neck and pointed beak to snatch small dinosaurs and mammals from the ground. He may be, in modern ecological terms, more like a giant marabou stork than a giant fishing pelican. Tonight, in our walk, we see one Quetzalcoatlus far overhead, gliding slowly on the warm thermals rising from the Cretaceous floodplain. His shadow passes across the grass below him in a slow, patient sweep. He is alone in the sky. Below him, the dinosaurs continue their slow evening. We are about to lift up briefly, with him, to look across the wider late Cretaceous land of North America. Across the entire continent, similar floodplain ecosystems run from what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan in the north to what is now Texas and New Mexico in the south. The dinosaur faunas vary somewhat from north to south, but the basic structure is consistent. Large ceratopsians, large hadrosaurs, large tyrannosaurs, armored ankylosaurs, small fast theropods, abundant small mammals in the leaf litter, pterosaurs in the sky. To the east of these floodplains lies the Great Western Interior Seaway. This shallow inland sea, perhaps 600 miles wide at its widest point and reaching from the Arctic to the Gulf of Mexico, splits North America in two. On the eastern shore of the seaway, in what is now the eastern United States and Canada, a different but related dinosaur fauna lives. This eastern landmass, called Appalachia by some paleontologists, has its own ceratopsians, its own hadrosaurs, its own tyrannosaurs, although smaller, perhaps because of the isolated geography, its own mammals and birds. The Western Interior Seaway separates these two North American faunas for tens of millions of years, until the very end of the Cretaceous when it begins to drain. We are set to step down briefly into this Western Interior Seaway. It is one of the most extraordinary marine environments the planet has ever produced. We are going to stay in the Western Interior Seaway for a longer moment, because it is one of the great marine worlds the planet has ever produced, and we have so far only sampled it. We are about to lower ourselves now, gently, into the warm, shallow blue-green water itself. The afternoon sun is bright. Visibility is perhaps 40 feet through the slightly milky, chalky water. Below us the seafloor is fine white chalk, gently sloping, dotted with the small calcareous skeletons of countless plankton that have rained down through the water column for millions of years. A school of ammonites drifts past at our level. They are Placenticas miki, mid-sized ammonites with smooth coiled shells, perhaps 8 inches across. There are hundreds of them, all moving together in a slow rotating school, their tentacled heads protruding from their shell openings, their bodies neutrally buoyant in the warm water. They feed on smaller zooplankton, on krill-like crustaceans, on the occasional small fish. Ammonites are one of the great evolutionary success stories of the entire Mesozoic. They have been in the world's oceans for nearly 400 million years by this point, going back to the early Devonian. They have survived 3 mass extinctions, the end Devonian, the end Permian, just barely with only a small number of lineages surviving the Great Extinction, and the end Triassic. They have radiated, again and again, into new species and new body plans. They are, in the late Cretaceous, at perhaps their richest diversity ever, with hundreds of species occupying every marine ecosystem, from shallow shelf seas to deep open ocean. They will not survive the next extinction. The asteroid impact 66 million years before your own present will end the ammonite lineage forever. The strange resilience that carried them through 3 previous extinctions will, for reasons still actively debated, fail at the Capeg boundary. After Chicxulub, no ammonite will ever swim again. Their distant relatives, the nautilus and the squid and the octopus, will survive, but the great coiled-shelled ammonite lineage will be gone. Tonight, in our walk, they are still here. They are still drifting in their hundreds through the warm seaway. They are still feeding, mating, growing, dying their patient natural deaths. We watch them for a moment. A shadow passes overhead. We look up. A Tyrannosaurus proroger is cruising 15 feet above us, his 50-foot streamlined body cutting smoothly through the warm water. He's fully grown, a male, perhaps 30 years old. His head is broad and flat with powerful crushing jaws. His 4 paddle-shaped limbs are folded against his sides. His long tapering tail, ending in a small tail fluke, drives him forward in slow, easy undulations. Mosasaurs of his size and family are the apex predators of the late Cretaceous shallow seas. Their lineage is, evolutionarily speaking, surprisingly recent. The mosasaurs derive from a group of land-going monitor lizard-like reptiles that took to the sea only in the Middle Cretaceous, perhaps 90 million years ago. They have, in the 25 million years since, undergone an extraordinarily rapid radiation. From small near-shore predators of the mid-Cretaceous, they have become the dominant marine reptile predators of the late Cretaceous, displacing the great pliosaurs that had ruled the Jurassic and early Cretaceous seas. This Tyrannosaurus is not actively hunting. He has fed recently. He is patrolling, cruising slowly through his territory, watching the water column for opportunities. His eyes, large and forward-facing, give him excellent binocular vision through the milky water. His sense of smell is good. He can detect blood and prey distress signals from a long way off. We follow him for a while. He's a remarkable animal. He moves with the same patient grace as a modern large shark or a modern killer whale. He breathes air. Periodically he surfaces, blows out a fine spray and takes a long, deep breath through his nostrils set high on his snout, then submerges again. He can dive deep, perhaps 200 feet, although he prefers the warmer surface waters where most of his prey lives. A school of fish moves below us in the deeper water. They are silvery, fast, perhaps 2 feet long each. They are Encodus, sometimes called the saber-toothed herring of the Cretaceous because of their large protruding teeth. They are abundant in the seaway, occupying a mid-trophic level role as predators of smaller fish and as prey for larger predators like the mosasaurs and the sharks. Tyrannosaurus has seen them. He angles slightly downward. The Encodus school panics, breaking into the silver flash of mass evasion that fish schools use against large predators. Tyrannosaurus drives into the school with a sudden burst of speed. He snatches one fish, then another, his jaws closing with enormous force on the small silver bodies. He surfaces briefly, swallows them, and continues his patrol. We let him go. Below us on the white chalk seafloor a different creature is moving. He's a giant marine turtle, Argentinosaurus, the largest sea turtle that has ever lived. He is 15 feet long, weighing 2 tons. His broad leathery shell is patterned in dark and lighter zones. His 4 powerful flipper limbs propel him in slow, steady strokes. His head is large, with a parrot-like beak that he uses to crush ammonites and other shelled prey. Arcelon is patient. She's foraging tonight, moving slowly across the chalk seafloor in search of ammonites and other slow-moving prey. She picks up a small Placenticerus, crushes its shell with her beak, and consumes the soft body within. She drifts on. She does not have a long life ahead of her. The capage extinction will end her lineage. The genus Archelon will not survive. Her relatives, the modern sea turtles, are not directly descended from her. They are descended from other turtle lineages that, smaller and more generalist, will survive the asteroid in greater numbers. We watch her for a while. She's one of the great gentle giants of the Cretaceous oceans. She will, in time, in her own old age, haul herself onto a sandy beach to lay her last clutch of eggs, then slip back into the water and die in the open sea a few months later. Her body will sink to the chalk floor. Her shell will eventually fossilize. 75 million years from this moment, an American paleontologist working in the Kansas chalk beds will uncover her bones and reconstruct her in a museum where children will stand in front of her great shell and try and fail to imagine the size of her in life. We rise back toward the surface. Above us the late afternoon sun is bright. The water lightens. We break through into the air. Above the seaway the sky is hazed with high thin clouds. Far above, pterosaurs glide. They are smaller than Quetzalcoatlus, the great late Cretaceous land glider, but they are abundant over the open sea. They are Pteranodon longiceps, sometimes called toothless winged ones, with 30-foot wingspans, long backward projecting head crests and beaks designed for snatching fish from the surface. Their colonies nest on the eastern shores of the seaway, in the chalk cliffs that will eventually become parts of modern Kansas and Nebraska. They fly out over the open water in the mornings, hunt all day, and return to their colonies at dusk. Tonight, we watch a small group of Pteranodons circling slowly. One drops, suddenly, snatching a small fish from the surface, then rises again on the warm thermals. They are graceful, efficient, beautiful in flight. In the water below them, a Cretaceous mantelli, the Ginsu shark, is hunting his evening's prey. He's 20 feet long, with a streamlined torpedo body and a mouthful of serrated teeth. He is, in shape and habits, very similar to a modern great white shark, although he predates the modern great white by perhaps 80 million years. He hunts smaller mosasaurs, juvenile plesiosaurs, large fish, and the occasional unwary pteranodon that surfaces too close to him. He is one of the most successful and abundant predators of the seaway. We watch him cruise. He moves with the same patient menace as a modern great white. He is, in his own quiet way, one of the great predators of the Cretaceous oceans, almost as deadly as the mosasaurs themselves. Settle for a moment. The western interior seaway, in its full late Cretaceous richness, is a remarkable marine world. It has the mosasaurs as its great apex predators. It has the plesiosaurs as its long-necked secondary predators. It has the sharks and the giant fish as additional apex-level competitors. It has the ammonites in their vast schools. It has the giant turtles cruising the deeper waters. It has the pteranodon flying overhead. It is in many ways more biologically rich than any modern shallow sea you can compare it to. The modern ocean has lost many of its great reptilian lineages. The modern ocean's largest predators are sharks and whales, but they are alone in their tier. In the Cretaceous, mosasaurs, large pliosaurs, in earlier parts of the period, and large sharks all coexisted as overlapping apex tiers. The Cretaceous seas had more diverse vertebrate megafauna than almost any sea ever since, and it is all about to end. The asteroid is on its way. 66 million years from this Cretaceous evening, the entire seaway ecosystem will collapse. The mosasaurs will go, the plesiosaurs will go, the ammonites will go, the giant archelon turtles will go, the pteranodon will go, Cretaceous, the Ginsu shark and his kin will go. The seaway itself, draining slowly over the next several million years, will leave behind only the chalk beds that will, when uplifted in later geological eras, become the Niobrara chalk formation of central North America. Tonight, in our walk, none of this has happened yet. The seaway is at its peak. The mosasaurs are still hunting. The Tyrannosaurus is still cruising. The ammonites are still drifting in their hundreds. The archelon is still crushing shells on the chalk floor. The pteranodon are still circling. We rise out of the seaway, gently, into the warm late afternoon air. We are set to return to land. The seaway is warm. The water is shallow, perhaps a few 100 feet deep at the centre, much shallower near the coasts. The seafloor is mostly fine white chalk, formed from the accumulated skeletons of small calcareous plankton that have been raining down through the water column for millions of years. The chalk is so abundant in some parts of the seaway that it gives rise, when later uplifted and eroded, to the Niobrara chalk formation of modern Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, one of the richest sources of Cretaceous marine fossils anywhere in the world. In this warm, chalky seaway, an extraordinary marine ecosystem thrives. Mosasaurs hunt the deeper water. They have, by this point in the late Cretaceous, become the dominant large marine predators. The most famous, Mosasaurus hoffmanni himself, swims here in the eastern seaway, his 50-foot streamlined body cruising slowly through the open water. Tyrannosaurus proroger, whose deeper water sea monster story we have told in another episode, lives in slightly different parts of the seaway. Other smaller mosasaur species occupy different niches. Together, They are the apex of the marine food web in this inland sea. The mosasaurs share the seaway with plesiosaurs. Elasmosaurus platyurus, the long-necked plesiosaur, is the most distinctive. He can be more than 40 feet long, with more than half of that length in his extraordinarily long neck. He has more vertebrae in his neck than almost any other vertebrate, more than 70 in some specimens. He uses his long neck to dart his small head into schools of fish, snatching prey from a distance before the school can fully react. Sharks are abundant. Cretoxyrhina mantelli, the Ginsu shark, is perhaps 20 feet long, the largest pelagic shark of the Cretaceous, with serrated teeth and a body plan very similar to a modern great white. He hunts smaller mosasaurs, large fish, and the occasional unwary plesiosaur. Smaller shark species fill the smaller niches. Bony fish are abundant and diverse. Xiphactinus audax, the giant predatory bony fish, is perhaps 20 feet long, with a streamlined silver body and a mouthful of sharp teeth. He swallows smaller fish whole. Some Xiphactinus fossils have been found with their last meal, often a Gillicus or other smaller fish, still preserved inside their stomachs, the predator and prey both having died moments apart and been fossilized together. Giant marine turtles cruise the warmer waters. Archelonis kairos, the largest sea turtle that has ever lived, reaches 15 feet in length, with a broad, leathery shell and 4 powerful flipper limbs. She hauls herself slowly onto the eastern beaches of the seaway during breeding season to lay her eggs, much as modern leatherback turtles do. Ammonites are everywhere. These coiled cephalopods, distantly related to modern nautilus and squid, fill the water column in vast numbers. They range from small species the size of your fist to huge species like Parapuzosia sepneradensis, with shells more than 5 feet across. The ammonites are one of the great success stories of the Mesozoic seas. They will, when the asteroid arrives at the end of the Cretaceous, suffer one of the most complete and devastating extinctions of any major group. The ammonite lineage, which had survived 3 previous mass extinctions, will not survive Chicxulub. We are going to step out of the western interior seaway and back onto land. We have walked through a lot tonight. Let your breath slow. We have met the Triceratops matriarch at the river bend. We have met the great Tyrannosaurus rex hunting through the ferns at dusk. We have walked alongside the Edmontosaurus herds in the marsh. We have watched the armoured Ankylosaurus move slowly through the dry ground. We have glimpsed the pachycephalosaurs in the conifer groves. We have seen Quetzalcoatlus gliding overhead. We have dipped briefly into the western interior seaway and met mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, sharks, Xiphactinus, Archelon, ammonites. There are still many late Cretaceous dinosaurs we have not met tonight. There are the dromaeosaurs, Velociraptor and his relatives, although the famous Velociraptor lived in Mongolia, not in Hell Creek. There are the small fast ornithomimids, the bird-mimic dinosaurs, who look something like modern emus with hands. There are the heavily feathered therizinosaurs, the strange long-clawed plant-eating theropods. There are the small fast troodontids, who are among the smartest dinosaurs and may have spent much of their time hunting at night. There are the tiny mammals living in the leaf litter, ancestors of all the mammals that will eventually inherit the world. There are the first true birds, descended from small feathered theropods of the Jurassic, already diversifying in the Cretaceous canopies. While the great dinosaurs of the Hell Creek floodplains hunt and graze and rest under the Cretaceous moon, smaller animals move through the same world, almost invisible to the giants around them. We are about to lower ourselves now, almost to the ground itself. We are set to step into the leaf litter at the base of a Cretaceous magnolia tree, in a quiet corner of the floodplain, perhaps a quarter of a mile from where the T-Rex is feeding. The world here, at the scale of inches rather than feet, is alive in ways that the dinosaur-scale picture of the Cretaceous does not always show. In the soft moss at the base of the tree, a small mammal moves. She's about the size of a modern hedgehog, perhaps 8 inches long including her tail. Her fur is dense, dark brown, soft. Her ears are small and rounded, set close to her head. Her snout is long and pointed. Her teeth are small and sharp, suited for eating insects, worms, and the occasional small lizard or amphibian. She is Didelphodon vorax, one of the largest mammals in the late Cretaceous of North America. The fact that she is, at hedgehog size, considered one of the largest mammals tells you almost everything you need to know about the world she lives in. The Mesozoic was the age of dinosaurs. The mammals, which had been around for as long as the dinosaurs, both groups emerged in the Triassic, had remained small. There were no large mammals during the Mesozoic. The largest reached perhaps the size of a modern badger or a small dog. Most were the size of rats, mice, or shrews. Didelphodon is, in this small mammal world, an exception, a relative giant. She's a member of the Metatherian lineage, which includes the ancestors of modern marsupials. She's not directly ancestral to modern marsupials, who survive in Australia and South America today, but she shares a deep common ancestor with them, somewhere back in the early Cretaceous. Her relatives have already, in the Cretaceous, crossed land bridges to South America and Antarctica, beginning the long evolutionary journey that will eventually give rise to kangaroos and possums and Tasmanian devils. Tonight, she is hunting. She moves slowly through the moss and leaf litter, sniffing for prey. Her eyes are large for night vision. Her sense of smell is excellent. She finds a beetle, snatches it with a quick movement of her sharp little jaws, crunches it, swallows. She has a den nearby, in a small hollow under the magnolia roots. In the den, 3 small babies are waiting for her. She has been a mother for only a few weeks. The babies are blind, still nearly hairless, dependent on her for everything. She will hunt all night, eating perhaps her own body weight in insects and small prey, to produce enough milk to feed them for tomorrow. She does not know about the great dinosaurs that walk her world. She has, of course, seen them. She has been startled by their footsteps. She has avoided their bedding down areas, but she does not understand them as we do. She does not know that they are temporary, that her own lineage will inherit the world after they are gone. She knows only that there are very large dangerous things that walk through her landscape, and that the smart move is to stay small and stay hidden. It is a smart move. The asteroid is coming. The great dinosaurs around her will not survive it. Her own lineage, the small mammals, will mostly come through the impact winter. They will, in the 66 million years that follow, radiate out into every empty ecological niche the dinosaurs leave behind. They will grow large. They will diversify. They will become the bears and whales and elephants and primates of the Cenozoic. They will eventually produce, in a long, slow, patient evolutionary chain, the human species who will, 66 million years from this Cretaceous night, dig up her bones and reconstruct her in laboratories and museums. Tonight, of course, she does not know any of this. She's hunting beetles in the leaf litter. She's nursing her babies in their hidden den. She's alive, here, now. Let the breath slow. Let the weight of her settle gently. She is, in a deep evolutionary sense, our ancestor's cousin. She is part of the lineage that produced you. The Cretaceous mammals like her are the bridge between the small Triassic mammal-like ancestors and the modern mammals of your own world. They survived the Cretaceous as small, careful animals because being small and careful was the only viable strategy in a world dominated by dinosaurs. Their long, quiet apprenticeship in the dinosaur-shadowed Mesozoic is part of how they were ready, evolutionarily, to inherit the post-Cretaceous world. She moves on. She finds another beetle. She catches it. She continues hunting. We lift our awareness slightly into the lower branches of the magnolia tree above her. Here, in the dense foliage, small creatures roost for the night. They are not bats. Bats will not appear for another 40 million years yet. They are not mammals at all. They are the first true birds, the small feathered descendants of the dromaeosaurs and the other small theropod dinosaurs we have already met. They are the only dinosaurs that will survive the upcoming asteroid impact. We watch one of them now. She is small, perhaps the size of a modern thrush. Her feathers are dark brown on her back, lighter on her chest. Her beak is long and slender. She's roosting on a branch, asleep. Her head tucked under her wing in the same posture that her descendants, modern birds, will adopt 66 million years later in your own modern garden trees. She is Ichthyornis dispar, or one of her close relatives. She's one of the more derived Mesozoic birds, with a true bony beak. Most contemporary birds still had small teeth, with wings capable of strong-powered flight, with a body plan very similar in basic outline to a modern seabird. She lives, in life, near the shores of the Western Interior Seaway, hunting small fish from the surface much as modern gulls and terns do. Tonight, she has wandered inland, perhaps blown off course by a storm, and is roosting in this magnolia tree before continuing back toward the coast in the morning. She's one of many bird species in the late Cretaceous world. There are also Hesperornis regalis, a flightless diving seabird perhaps 5 feet long, with vestigial wings and powerful swimming legs, who hunts fish in the Western Interior Seaway by diving like a modern loon or cormorant. There are the small Enantiorniths, the opposite birds, a now extinct group of perching birds that occupied the small forest niches across the Cretaceous. There are the early modern bird lineages, the Neoniths, which are just beginning to diversify. Their descendants will be the only birds that survive the asteroid impact, and will radiate, in the Cenozoic, into every modern bird species you know. The bird tree of life in the late Cretaceous is bushier and more diverse than the modern bird tree. Many lineages of Mesozoic birds will go extinct at the KPU boundary, alongside the non-avian dinosaurs. Only one major bird lineage, the modern bird group, will survive. From that single surviving lineage, all of the 10,000 modern bird species will eventually descend. Tonight, in our walk, both the surviving and the doomed bird lineages are still here. They're all roosting in the warm Cretaceous trees. They're all asleep, dreaming whatever it is that birds dream. We lift our awareness higher into the canopy of the same magnolia tree. Here, among the broad, pale leaves of the angiosperm forest, insects move. Lacewings drift in the cool air. Beetles climb the trunk. A small night-flying moth dips between leaves, attracted by the soft, sweet scent of the magnolia flowers. The angiosperm pollinator relationships of the late Cretaceous are well established by this time. Bees have evolved. Butterflies have evolved, although they remain less diverse than they will become in the Cenozoic. The broad complex of flower and insect coevolution that will dominate Cenozoic ecosystems is already in place. A small spider waits in a web stretched between two branches. She's a modern-style orb weaver, not very different from spiders you might find in your own modern garden. Spiders as a group are far older than dinosaurs. They have been on land since the Devonian, around 400 million years ago. They are remarkable evolutionary persisters. They have survived every mass extinction so far, and they will survive the KPG as well. The web on this Cretaceous branch tonight is, in every essential way, the same kind of structure your modern garden spiders will build 66 million years from now. Breathe slow. The world of the Cretaceous, at the scale of inches and below, is alive in ways that the great dinosaurs never quite see. There is a parallel kingdom of small lives, mammalian, avian, insectoid, arachnid, threading through the dinosaur world, eating and being eaten on a smaller scale, breeding and dying on a faster turnover, mostly invisible to the great reptiles around them. This smaller world will largely survive what the dinosaurs cannot. The mammals will come through. Many of the bird lineages will come through. The spiders and the insects will come through mostly. The post-Cretaceous world will not be empty. It will be repopulated slowly from these small, careful survivors who are tonight going about their unobserved business in the leaf litter and the canopy. We lift away from the magnolia tree slowly. We move back across the Cretaceous floodplain. The matriarch Triceratops is still sleeping at her river bend. The T-Rex is still feeding on his Edmontosaurus. The marsh herd is still bedded down. The Quetzalcoatlus is still asleep on his Cretaceous conifer perch. The mosasaurs are still cruising in the western interior seaway, far to the east. And the small mammals are still hunting beetles. The small birds are still asleep on their branches. The insects are still drifting between the magnolia flowers. The spider is still waiting in her web. The whole world breathes in its many overlapping rhythms on this single late Cretaceous night. We are going to make one more long journey before we settle into the ending of our walk. We have visited the late Cretaceous of North America, of South America, of Central Asia, of polar Alaska. We are about to step now into the late Cretaceous of the southern continents, into a part of the world that very few people, even very few paleontologists, know in detail. We are going to step into late Cretaceous Australia and Antarctica. The two continents at this time, around 80 million years ago, are still joined as a single landmass. Their separation, which will give modern Australia her distinctive isolated biology, is still tens of millions of years in the future. Tonight, an animal walking in southern Australia can walk all the way to Antarctica without crossing an ocean. The forests are continuous. The rivers flow from the Australian highlands south and west into the Antarctic regions. The climate here is mild. We are at high southern latitudes, perhaps 60 to 70 degrees south, which in your modern world is the latitude of southern South America or the Antarctic Peninsula. In the Cretaceous, with no polar ice and dramatically warmer global climate, this latitude supports temperate forests. The vegetation is dominated by southern beech, Nothofagus, ancestors, by tree ferns, by podocarp conifers, by ginkgos. There are flowering plants, but they are less dominant here than in the northern continents. The polar high-latitude regions of the Cretaceous are still relatively conifer-rich. The seasons here are pronounced. The summer is mild and bright with long subpolar days. The winter is cool and dark, with several months of polar night each year. The forest plants are adapted to seasonal light cycles. The dinosaur fauna is adapted to the same. We will step into a quiet southern Australian forest in summer near the present-day Victoria region. The trees here are dense. The light is dim even in summer afternoon. The forest floor is covered in soft moss and fallen ferns. A slow river runs through the trees, its water cool and clear. A small group of dinosaurs is moving through the forest. They are lialinosaurs, small ornithopod dinosaurs perhaps 6 to 10 feet long. They are bipedal, fast, herbivorous. They have unusually large eyes, almost certainly an adaptation to the dim forest light, and to the long polar winters when they need good low-light vision to find food. Lialinosaurus and her close relatives were discovered by the Australian paleontologists Tom and Pat Rich in a long, careful series of excavations along the Victoria coast that began in the 1970s and continues today. The Australian polar dinosaur fauna is one of the most extraordinary paleontological communities in the world, found in difficult-to-excavate sediments along storm-battered coastlines, painstakingly recovered by a small dedicated team of researchers across decades. We watch the lialinosaurs feed. They are quick, alert, nervous-looking. They feed by browsing on low ferns and small angiosperm shrubs. They keep close together, scanning constantly for predators. The predators here are different from those in North America. There is no T-Rex. There are no large Carcharodontosaurs like in South America. The Australian polar fauna had its own predators, mostly smaller theropods adapted to the dim forest and the long winter. Australovenator wintonensis, perhaps 20 feet long, is one of the larger predators known from Australia, though he probably hunted slightly further north in warmer regions. The Victoria forests are hunted by smaller theropods, perhaps allosaurid descendants who persisted in Australia long after their kin had been replaced elsewhere by tyrannosaurs. We see one of these smaller theropods now, perhaps 15 feet long, moving through the dense ferns. He is watching the Lyrlinosaur group. He is not committed to an attack. He may be too small to take adult Lyrlinosaurs, although he could probably take a juvenile. The Lyrlinosaurs sense him. The group freezes, then explodes into rapid retreat, splitting into multiple smaller groups that flee in different directions. The theropod pursues one group for perhaps 100 feet, then gives up. The Lyrlinosaurs are fast. They have escaped. Take a deep breath. The polar Australian Cretaceous is a different ecosystem from the famous late Cretaceous of the Northern Hemisphere. It runs on slower, smaller, more endurance-focused biology. The dinosaurs here are less spectacular, less famous, but no less real and no less successful in their own environment. They lived here for tens of millions of years. They bred, raised their young, hunted, fled, died, and were eventually buried in the soft Cretaceous sediments along what would become the modern Australian coast. We move slowly across the polar landscape. The forest is quiet. Somewhere in the distance, the slow rush of the river. Closer in, the soft sounds of insects and small life. The light through the canopy is dim, dappled, beautiful. We travel further south, across the slowly tearing rift between Australia and Antarctica. We step into Antarctic Cretaceous forest. The forest here is similar in basic composition to the Australian forest. Southern beech ancestors, podocarp conifers, tree ferns. The light is even more strongly seasonal. In winter, this region experiences true polar night for months at a time, and in summer, true polar day. The forest plants are extreme specialists in this seasonal light cycle. There are dinosaurs here. The Antarctic Peninsula and the broader Cretaceous Antarctic landmass support sauropod dinosaurs, small ornithopods, and theropod predators. The fauna is fragmentary in the fossil record because Antarctic paleontology is so difficult to conduct, but enough has been recovered to confirm that the Antarctic Cretaceous was a real dinosaur ecosystem, not just a marginal extension of the Australian fauna. We watch a single sauropod, perhaps 50 feet long, moving slowly through the Antarctic forest. He is a titanosaur related to the great Argentinosaurus we have already met in Patagonia. He is smaller than his South American relatives, perhaps the size of an early sauropod from the Jurassic rather than the late Cretaceous Patagonian giants. The Antarctic environment, with its long winter darkness and limited cold season productivity, has selected for smaller body size in the local sauropods. He moves with patient, steady steps through the dim forest, browsing on conifer foliage and tree ferns. He will, like all his kin, eventually go extinct at the KP boundary. The Antarctic dinosaur fauna will not survive Chicxulub, but tonight, he is alive. He is browsing. The Antarctic forest is alive around him. The summer day is fading into the long subpolar dusk that will eventually become true polar night. Let the moment open. Hold the moment lightly. The Antarctic Cretaceous is a real place. It existed. Dinosaurs lived there. They had their own slow rhythms, their own seasonal adaptations, their own life histories. They were part of the great Cretaceous world we have walked through tonight. We lift away. We travel back north, across the great width of the Mesozoic Earth, back to North America and the Hell Creek floodplain where the matriarch Triceratops still sleeps. The Cretaceous moon is now low in the western sky. The night is approaching its end. Dawn is perhaps 2 hours away. We could spend many more hours walking through the Cretaceous. We have, in truth, only sampled it. But the Cretaceous, in our story tonight, is moving toward its great ending. The last few million years of the period are unfolding around us. The continents are continuing their slow drift apart. The flowering plants are continuing their slow takeover. The dinosaur faunas are at their richest peak, and far out beyond the orbit of Mars, a single asteroid is moving on its slow, patient trajectory across the inner solar system. It will not arrive for millions of years yet, but it is coming. It is, in some quiet sense, already on its way. We are about to leave the Hell Creek floodplain for a while and move into the very late Cretaceous, the last million years of the period, the slow approach to the impact. The world of the very latest Cretaceous, perhaps 67 million years ago, is in some ways the richest and strangest of all. The continents have moved into their near-modern positions. North America is its own continent, although still partly divided by the slowly draining western interior seaway. South America has fully separated from Africa. India has continued her northward drift. Australia and Antarctica are beginning to separate. The climate is hot, although there are hints of slow cooling. The polar regions, while not glaciated, are cooler than they were in the early Cretaceous. There are seasonal frosts in some high-latitude regions. Some paleontologists have argued that the late Cretaceous dinosaur faunas were already under climate stress before the asteroid hit, with declining biodiversity in some lineages. Other paleontologists argue that the dinosaur faunas were thriving right up to the moment of impact, and that the asteroid is the only meaningful cause of the tapir extinction. The debate is active. Honest evidence supports both sides to some degree. Tonight, in our walk, we will not resolve the question. We will simply note that the late Cretaceous, while in some ways at its peak, is also showing the first hints of the slow climatic shifts that will, regardless of the asteroid, eventually have ended the dinosaur faunas as they were. We are going to pause our walk through the late Cretaceous floodplain for a moment, and step back gently to consider the broader Cretaceous world. The climate, the chemistry, the slow, long forces that shaped this period in ways that the dinosaurs themselves could not see. The Cretaceous, as a whole, was one of the warmest sustained intervals in the entire history of complex life on Earth. The planet was, in modern climate terms, a deep greenhouse world. There were no polar ice caps for almost the entire 79 million year span. Sea levels were dramatically higher than today, perhaps 200 to 700 feet higher at various points across the period, flooding huge portions of the continental interiors with shallow inland seas like the Western Interior Seaway and its many global counterparts. Average global temperatures across the Cretaceous were perhaps 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than your modern world. Tropical conditions extended much further north and south than they do today. Forests reached the poles. Crocodiles and turtles lived in what is now the Canadian Arctic. Dinosaurs lived on what is now Antarctica. The cause of this sustained warmth, as best as paleoclimatologists can reconstruct from rock chemistry and isotope analysis, was a combination of factors. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were 3 to 6 times higher than your modern pre-industrial baseline, perhaps as high as 1,000 parts per million during the peak Cretaceous warmth. This very high greenhouse gas atmosphere, sustained by long periods of unusually high volcanic activity along the mid-ocean ridges, kept the planet warm. The arrangement of the continents, particularly the open Tethys Sea between the northern and southern hemispheres, allowed warm ocean currents to circulate globally with much greater efficiency than in your modern continental arrangement. The Cretaceous was, in many ways, an enormous natural experiment in deep greenhouse climate. The dinosaurs walked through that experiment for tens of millions of years. They evolved, radiated, and thrived under conditions that, by your modern standards, would be considered impossibly hot. There are lessons in this for your own modern century. The Cretaceous demonstrates that very high carbon dioxide levels are compatible with abundant life on Earth, in a long-term geological sense. Forests thrive, reptiles thrive. The oceans, despite higher temperatures and lower oxygen content in some regions, host complex marine ecosystems. The biosphere does not collapse under high carbon dioxide, but the Cretaceous greenhouse was a slow, steady-state climate, built up over tens of millions of years. The fast modern transition into greenhouse conditions, occurring over a few centuries, is a different kind of event. The biosphere of the Cretaceous had time to evolve into the warm conditions. The biosphere of the modern world does not have that time. We hold this lightly, here in our walk. We are not making a political point. We are simply noting that the Cretaceous greenhouse is real, that it operated for a long time, and that it tells us important things about how the biosphere responds to high carbon dioxide on geological timescales. The modern context is different, but the deep time lessons remain useful. We move forward in our walk. The Cretaceous climate for most of its run is stable. But across the last few million years before the asteroid impact, the climate is changing. The polar regions, while not yet glaciated, are slowly cooling. Some climate proxies suggest that the very late Cretaceous, the last million or two before Chicxulub, was perhaps as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit cooler in some regions than the peak Cretaceous warmth of 40 million years earlier. The western interior seaway is slowly draining as sea levels fall. The great open polar forests are slowly shifting their composition. The dinosaur faunas are in some lineages beginning to show signs of stress. Whether this slow cooling would have eventually ended the dinosaur faunas on its own, without the asteroid, is one of the great open questions in paleontology. Some researchers argue that the dinosaur diversity was declining before Chicxulub, and that the asteroid simply finished off lineages that were already weakening. Other researchers argue that the dinosaur diversity was stable, or even increasing right up to the moment of impact, and that the asteroid is fully responsible for the extinction. The honest answer is that we are not certain. The fossil record at the KPG boundary, while better studied than almost any other boundary in geological history, is still incomplete. Different sampling techniques give different pictures. The debate remains active. There is also another factor in the very late Cretaceous environment that may have contributed to global stress: the Deccan traps. We will lift away from our North American floodplain now, briefly, and travel halfway around the world. We are about to step into central India, around 66.5 million years ago, perhaps a few 100,000 years before the asteroid impact. The landscape here is alien. India, at this point in her northward drift, is somewhere south of where she will eventually dock with Asia. She's currently passing over a vast mantle plume, a deep upwelling of hot material from the lower mantle. The plume is venting molten basalt onto the surface in colossal volumes. The Deccan Traps eruptions, as they will eventually be called by geologists, are some of the largest volcanic events in the entire history of the Earth. Across approximately 1 million years, beginning a few 100,000 years before the asteroid impact and continuing for several 100,000 years after it, the Deccan eruptions will pour out over 200,000 cubic miles of basalt lava. The resulting basalt plateau will cover much of what is now Western India. In lava flows up to 1.5 miles thick. To stand in the Deccan during these eruptions tonight is to stand in a world of fire and ash. Long ridges of flowing lava advance slowly across the landscape, glowing red in the dusk. The sky is black with ash. The air is thick with sulfur dioxide and other volcanic gases. Hot springs steam from the ground. The land for hundreds of miles around the eruptions is uninhabitable. The local Indian dinosaur fauna has been displaced or killed. The eruptions, while not catastrophic on a global scale yet, are pumping enormous quantities of greenhouse gases and sulfur aerosols into the atmosphere. The global climate is being affected. Average temperatures may have shifted up and down by several degrees Fahrenheit in response to alternating phases of greenhouse gas warming and sulfate aerosol cooling. Ocean chemistry is being subtly altered. Whether the Deccan eruptions on their own would have caused a mass extinction is debated. They almost certainly contributed to the KPG extinction. The combination of the Deccan eruptions and the Chicxulub asteroid impact is probably the right model. The asteroid was the main cause of the rapid mass extinction. The Deccan was a long-term stressor that may have weakened ecosystems before the asteroid and prevented quick recovery after it. The question of how to apportion blame between the asteroid and the Deccan has occupied paleontologists for decades. The honest answer, again, is that both contributed. The asteroid did the catastrophic work in the first months and years after the impact. The Deccan contributed the long, slow background stress that may have made the ecosystem fragile and may have slowed recovery. Tonight, in our walk, the Deccan is erupting somewhere on the far side of the planet. The North American dinosaurs do not feel it directly yet. The matriarch Triceratops, sleeping at her river bend, has no awareness of the Indian eruptions. The T-Rex, finishing his Edmontosaurus meal, has no awareness either. The atmospheric effects, while real, are subtle at this distance. The global climate is changing slowly, in ways that no individual dinosaur can perceive, but the world is, in deep ways, already shifting. The polar regions are cooler than they were 10 million years ago. Sea levels are falling. The western interior seaway is draining. The dinosaur faunas, while still abundant and diverse, are facing slow accumulating stress. The Deccan is erupting. And far beyond the orbit of Mars, the asteroid is moving on its long, patient trajectory toward the inner solar system. Take a deep breath. Hold the moment lightly. The Cretaceous world is not eternal. It feels eternal from inside any single Cretaceous evening, just as your own modern world feels eternal from inside any single modern evening. But it is not. It has a duration. It has a beginning and an end. The end is approaching. 66 million years before your own birth, the long quiet Mesozoic will give way to something new. We move on. We're going to travel back gently across the Pacific to our late Cretaceous Hell Creek floodplain. The matriarch Triceratops is still sleeping. The T-Rex has finished feeding and is resting near the carcass of his Edmontosaurus. The small mammals are still hunting in the leaf litter. The first birds are still asleep in their magnolia canopies. The Cretaceous moon is high. The night is patient. We will skip forward now in slow motion through the last few 100,000 years of the Cretaceous. We are about to make one more journey across the late Cretaceous world before we return to the matriarch Triceratops and the slow ending of the period. We are going to step into a part of the Cretaceous world that almost nobody knows about, and that has only been carefully studied in the past few decades. We will step into the polar Cretaceous. The polar regions in the late Cretaceous, as we have already mentioned, are not glaciated. There are no ice caps. But they are cooler than the tropical and temperate regions, and they experience the same long polar nights and long polar days that you would expect from the basic geometry of a tilted spinning planet. For several months of each year, the polar regions are in continuous darkness. For several months they are in continuous daylight. How do dinosaurs survive a polar winter? This question, surprising as it sounds, is a real one. There are dinosaur fossils in the polar regions. Late Cretaceous dinosaurs lived on what is now the Alaskan North Slope, well above the modern Arctic Circle, around 80 million years ago. Late Cretaceous dinosaurs also lived on what is now southern Australia and Antarctica, then joined as a single landmass, well below the modern Antarctic Circle. These polar dinosaur faunas were not just summer visitors. The fossils include juveniles and embryos, indicating that the dinosaurs bred there. They lived in the polar regions year-round. We are going to lower ourselves into one of these polar Cretaceous landscapes now. We are set to step into what will become northern Alaska around 75 million years ago. The geography is recognizable. The land is a broad, flat coastal plain with slow rivers winding through it, draining northward into the Arctic Ocean. The vegetation is a mix of conifers, ferns, ginkgos, and early angiosperms. The climate in the summer months is mild and temperate, comparable to a modern Pacific Northwest forest. In the winter, the climate is cold but not glacial. Snow falls, temperatures dip below freezing. The sun, for 2 or 3 months each winter, never rises. It is right now late autumn in this Cretaceous polar landscape. The sun has set in the late afternoon and will not rise again for another 3 weeks. The polar night is approaching. The leaves are turning, the ginkgos shedding their pale yellow fan-shaped leaves into the cooling water of the slow rivers. The forest floor is covered in fallen needles and leaves. The air is crisp. A herd of polar hadrosaurs moves slowly across the plain. They are Edmontosaurus, the same genus we have already met in Hell Creek, but the polar populations may be a distinct subspecies adapted to the colder northern conditions. They have, possibly, thicker coats of small primitive feathers or filamentous body covering, although this is not yet certain. They have almost certainly evolved behavioral adaptations to the polar winter. Deep fat reserves built up in summer, slow metabolic adjustments, perhaps some form of seasonal torpor or reduced activity through the darkest months. They are bedded down for the night, all together, in a sheltered hollow at the edge of a conifer grove. There are perhaps 50 of them. The dominant matriarch leads them. The calves are nestled among the adults. They sleep in the cool autumn darkness. A predator moves through the trees nearby. He's a smaller tyrannosaurid, Nanosaurus hoglundi, the polar bear lizard, named in honor of his Arctic habitat. He is perhaps 20 feet long, considerably smaller than his southern relative Tyrannosaurus rex. The reduced size is probably an adaptation to the more limited prey base of the polar regions, where the long winter darkness reduces overall productivity. A polar predator must survive on less abundant prey than a Hell Creek predator, and natural selection has scaled him down accordingly. He is, despite his smaller size, an effective hunter. He hunts the polar hadrosaurs, the Polaceratopsians, Pachyrhinosaurus, the smaller theropods of the polar fauna. He is, by all anatomical evidence, well adapted to the cold. He probably has a denser primitive feather covering than his tropical relatives, and his body shape is slightly more compact, conserving heat better. He's not hunting actively tonight. The cold is settling in. He has fed recently. He is, like the hadrosaurs, mostly resting in this autumn dusk, preparing for the long winter ahead. How does Nanosaurus survive the polar winter? This is one of the open questions in dinosaur paleobiology. The current best models suggest a combination of factors: slow metabolic adjustment through the cold months, reduced activity, possibly some form of partial hibernation, although it would not be true mammalian hibernation, but some other dinosaurian variant, selective targeting of prey species that themselves remain active through the winter. The polar dinosaurs were not just southern dinosaurs that happened to wander north. They were locally adapted populations with specific cold climate biology. Rest in this. The polar Cretaceous is a remarkable place. It tells us that dinosaurs were not just warm climate animals. They were thermally flexible, behaviorally adaptable, capable of inhabiting climates from the tropical equator to the polar regions. The traditional image of dinosaurs as slow, cold-blooded reptiles confined to hot climates is now thoroughly outdated. Dinosaurs were active, often endothermic or partially endothermic, and capable of polar winter survival in their cold, adapted populations. We watch the polar hadrosaurs sleep for a long, quiet moment. The autumn dusk deepens. The first stars appear. The polar night is approaching. In a few weeks, this whole landscape will be in continuous darkness, with the auroras curtaining across the sky in green and red waves, and the dinosaurs will spend the long polar night in slow, patient endurance. We lift away. We travel south, across the great width of late Cretaceous North America, and back down to the Hell Creek floodplain we have been visiting. We are returning one more time to the matriarch Triceratops at her river bend. It is now very late at night. The Cretaceous moon, somewhat smaller in apparent size than your modern moon, because across deep time the moon has been slowly receding from the Earth and was closer to us in the Cretaceous than it is in your modern century, is high in the sky. The stars are brilliant. The river runs slow and dark. She's still sleeping. Her great breath rises and falls. Her herd is settled around her in the deep night. The calves are tucked close. The young bull is dozing at the edge. We will walk along the river briefly before we settle into the ending of our walk. We're going to look at the late Cretaceous Hell Creek world in some last detail. Along the river, in the soft moonlit mud, footprints are preserved. There are Triceratops tracks, deep and round and wide, in lines that show the slow patient movement of the herd through their evening browsing. There are Edmontosaurus tracks, three-toed and slightly smaller, showing where the great hadrosaur herds have walked across the riverbank in the days past. There are T-Rex tracks, the largest and most distinctive of all, showing the great two-legged stride of the king. There are smaller theropod tracks, Dromaeosaur and Troodontid, showing where the smaller fast hunters have walked. These tracks are real. They are preserved in the Hell Creek Formation and in many other late Cretaceous sediments around the world. The trackways tell us about dinosaur behavior in ways that the bones alone cannot. They show us herd composition, walking speeds, prey-predator interactions in some cases, social structure, daily movement patterns. A famous trackway in Texas, the Glen Rose Dinosaur Tracks, preserves what appears to be a giant theropod following and possibly stalking a sauropod, with the theropod tracks overstepping the sauropod tracks in a way that suggests active pursuit. The interpretation is debated, but the basic picture of a predator tracking prey across a Cretaceous mudflat is compelling. A famous trackway in Alberta preserves a group of hadrosaurs moving together, with the smaller juvenile tracks consistently in the middle of the group, sheltered by the adults on either side, exactly as modern elephants and many other herd animals position their young for protection. These small, intimate moments of dinosaur behavior are preserved across Cretaceous sediments worldwide. Tonight in our walk, the Triceratops herd is laying down its own tracks in the soft mud of the river bend. 66 million years from this moment, some of those tracks may be preserved as trace fossils. Some may be exposed by erosion. Some may be discovered by paleontologists. The matriarch's own footprints, if preserved, may one day be cast and displayed in a museum, where a child will stand next to them and try to imagine the animal who made them. Let your breath slow. The Cretaceous world is alive around us tonight. The matriarch is sleeping. Her tracks are forming in the soft mud beneath her sleeping body. The river runs. The night holds. We are set to begin, now, the slow approach to our ending. The matriarch Triceratops we have walked with tonight is, of course, long dead by this point. Her individual life has ended, but her lineage continues. Her granddaughters and great-granddaughters are leading their own herds at their own river bends. The Edmontosaurus herds are still moving across the marshes. The tyrannosaurs are still hunting. The Quetzalcoatlus are still gliding overhead. The western interior seaway is still teeming with mosasaurs and ammonites and giant turtles. The world feels stable. It feels eternal. There is, from inside any single Cretaceous evening, no reason to expect that it is about to end. But it is. 66 million years ago, in late spring or early summer of a year that no calendar will ever name, a single asteroid, perhaps 6 to 9 miles across, strikes the Earth. We will walk slowly through the final hours of the Cretaceous now, not with hurry, not with drama, with the same patient attention we have given the rest of this long walk. The Triceratops matriarch we have been visiting is, by this point in our story, long gone. She is one matriarch in a lineage that continues. Generations of Triceratops have followed her at this same river bend across the next million years or so. The world we have been walking through, the Hell Creek floodplain of around 73 million years ago, is by now 7 million years in the past. We are going to step forward one final time to the very last day of the Cretaceous, 66 million years before your own present. A bright spring or early summer day in what will later be called the Late Maastrichtian, the final age of the Cretaceous period. The world looks much as it did 7 million years ago. The continents are in nearly modern positions. The western interior seaway has drained considerably and is now a much smaller body of water, no longer a full inland sea. The flowering plants are everywhere. The dinosaur faunas are still abundant. In many regions, they are at peak diversity. The matriarch's distant descendants are still walking the same Hell Creek floodplains. The T-Rex lineage is still dominant. The Edmontosaurus herds are still vast. The Ankylosaurus is still patiently grazing. The The polar dinosaurs are still surviving their winters in the Arctic and Antarctic regions. The western interior seaway, what remains of it, still hosts mosasaurs and pteranodon. It is a beautiful morning. The sun is rising. The dinosaurs are beginning their day. In the upper atmosphere, far above them, a faint pale streak appears. It is at first no more remarkable than a distant cloud. The dinosaurs do not look up at it. They're grazing, walking, drinking from the rivers, going about their ordinary morning. The streak grows brighter. It is moving across the sky at over 40,000 miles per hour. It is approaching the upper atmosphere of the Earth from the south-southwest, at a relatively shallow angle of perhaps 45 to 60 degrees above horizontal. It is in size about 6 to 9 miles across. It is the asteroid. In the next 12 seconds, it crosses the upper atmosphere. The friction heats it to incandescence. The streak becomes a fireball brighter than the sun. The dinosaurs across the Yucatan, across the Caribbean, across the Gulf Coast region, look up. The fireball is now larger than the sun, brighter than the sun, glowing white-blue across half the southern sky. It strikes the seafloor at the northern edge of what will later be called the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact site at this exact moment is a warm, shallow sea, perhaps 300 to 600 feet deep, with a thick layer of sulfur-rich gypsum sediments on the seafloor. The energy released by the impact is approximately 100 million megatons of TNT equivalent. That is more than the combined energy of every nuclear weapon ever built by every nation on Earth, all detonated simultaneously, multiplied by several thousand. It is one of the largest single energy releases in the geological history of the planet. The impact carves a crater more than 120 miles wide and 20 miles deep. The vaporized rock and seawater, hundreds of cubic miles of it, are launched into the upper atmosphere and beyond, some of it reaching low orbital trajectories. The ejected material includes a particularly devastating component: vaporized sulfur from the gypsum sediments at the impact site, which will, over the next weeks, form sulfate aerosols throughout the global atmosphere. In the first 10 seconds after the impact, the fireball expands outward from the impact crater. The temperature within the fireball reaches tens of thousands of degrees. Everything within several hundred miles of the impact site is incinerated. The Yucatan dinosaurs, the Yucatan plants, the Yucatan mammals and birds and insects and microorganisms are all destroyed in this first moment. Over the next minutes and hours, the shockwave radiates outward. Forests across thousands of miles are flattened by the shockwave's pressure. Massive tsunamis radiate from the impact point, with waves more than 300 feet tall reaching the Gulf coasts of North America within hours, and waves perhaps 100 feet tall reaching the more distant coasts of South America and West Africa within 12 to 24 hours. Across the entire globe, in the first hour after the impact, the sky begins to glow. The ejector that was launched into the upper atmosphere is now re-entering, falling back through the atmosphere at high speeds, heating the air through friction. The infrared heat from the re-entry causes surface temperatures across the whole planet to soar. Dinosaurs across continents thousands of miles from the impact site, who have no idea what is happening, suddenly find themselves in an oven. The air temperatures climb to perhaps 300 degrees Fahrenheit within hours. Forests ignite spontaneously. Wildfires burn across every continent. The Hell Creek floodplain we have been walking through is one of the regions affected. The great Triceratops herds, the T-Rex, the Edmontosaurus marshes, the Ankylosaurus in their dry hollows, are all caught in the fires. Those who can find water deep enough to submerge in may survive the first heat pulse. Those who cannot, who are caught on the open plains and in the dry forests, die in the fires. Above the burning forests, the sky has gone red, then orange, then dark. The ejector and the smoke from the global wildfires are filling the atmosphere. Within 24 hours of the impact, the sun is invisible from most of the planet's surface. The fires continue to burn in many regions for days. After the first heat pulse passes, the second phase begins, the impact winter. The atmosphere is now saturated with soot from the wildfires, dust from the ejector, and sulfate aerosols from the vaporized gypsum at the impact site. Sunlight is blocked across most of the planet, temperatures begin to drop. Within a few weeks, global average temperatures may be 20 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than before the impact, with even more dramatic drops in some regions. Photosynthesis fails. Plants on land cannot photosynthesize in the darkness. Plankton in the oceans cannot photosynthesize. The base of the food chain collapses, both on land and in the sea, almost simultaneously. The dinosaurs who survived the first heat pulse, who made it through the wildfires, now face a different problem. Their food is dying. The Triceratops herds, the Edmontosaurus herds, the Ankylosaurus, the polar hadrosaurs, all depend on plants that are now wilting and dying in the dark, cold conditions. Within weeks to a few months, the plant communities collapse across most ecosystems. The herbivores starve. The predators last longer because there is initially abundance of carrion. The T-Rex and the smaller theropods feed on the bodies of dying and dead herbivores. But the carrion bonanza is finite. Within a few months, most of the dead herbivores have been eaten. The predators then begin to starve. In the oceans, the same pattern plays out. The plankton crash. The small fish that eat plankton crash. The medium fish that eat small fish crash. The large fish, the marine reptiles, the mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, last a little longer, but they too run out of food. Within a year or two of the impact, the great Cretaceous marine ecosystems have collapsed. The impact winter lasts perhaps several months to a few years, with effects that linger for decades. During this period, around 75% of all species on Earth go extinct. The dinosaurs, the pterosaurs, the marine reptiles, the ammonites, the great Cretaceous plant communities all suffer dramatic die-offs. But not everything dies. The mammals, the small ones in particular, survive. Most mammals at the KPG boundary are small, less than 10 pounds. They live in burrows or sheltered habitats. They can find food in the leaf litter, in stored seeds and nuts, in the now abundant insect populations feeding on decay. Many of them can shelter underground or in caves through the worst of the cold and dark. They are generalist eaters, flexible, adaptable. They come through. Many bird lineages survive, particularly the small generalist seed eaters. The flying birds that nest in caves and tree hollows are sheltered from the worst of the conditions. Small generalist birds that can shift their diet to seeds, insects, and carrion come through. Some lineages of birds do not survive. The toothed enantiorniths are particularly hard hit. But the lineage of modern birds, the neornithers, comes through with several lineages intact. The lizards, snakes, frogs, salamanders and turtles mostly survive. Small generalist amphibians and reptiles are surprisingly resilient to the impact winter conditions. They can shelter in burrows, in mud, in deep water. They emerge slowly when conditions improve. The fish, in coastal and freshwater environments, are mostly hit hard but include lineages that come through. Deep ocean fish are partly buffered from the surface effects. The crocodiles survive. This may seem surprising given how large many Cretaceous crocodiles were, but the smaller crocodile lineages come through. Crocodiles are extraordinarily resilient. They can go months without eating. They can shelter in deep mud at the bottom of slow rivers. They can switch to scavenging as a primary food source. They live in places where vegetation does not need to be alive for them to survive. The plant lineages, while devastated, have surprising rebound capacity. Many flowering plant species survive as dormant seeds in the soil, waiting out the impact winter. When sunlight returns, weeks or months or years later, the seeds germinate. The land begins to recover slowly, beginning with weedy generalist species and gradually rebuilding complex forest communities over thousands and tens of thousands of years. The slow recovery from Chicxulub takes many millions of years. Full ecological complexity in terms of biomass and diversity comparable to the late Cretaceous is not restored until well into the Cenozoic. But recovery does happen. The world is repopulated. Life persists. We are set to step away from the impact, and the impact winter now. We have walked through this story before, in our Century of Darkness episode, in our T-Rex Last 24 Hours episode, in our Tyrannosaurus episode. We have honoured it again here, more briefly, because it is the ending of the Cretaceous, and we cannot tell the story of the Cretaceous without telling its end. But we will dwell on the catastrophe. Tonight, our walk has been about the long, quiet 79 million years of the Cretaceous, not about the few weeks at its end. Take a deep breath. Let the weight of the impact settle. Gently. It happened. The dinosaurs ended. The mammals inherited the world. We exist because of this. We hold all of it lightly. We are going to step back one final time to the Hell Creek night, where the matriarch Triceratops sleeps at her river bend. The impact point is what is now the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, then a warm, shallow sea on the southern edge of the Gulf of Mexico. The asteroid hits the seafloor at perhaps 40,000 miles per hour. The energy released by the impact is more than the explosion of 100 million atomic bombs going off at once. The crater carved by the impact is about 120 miles across and at least 20 miles deep. It will eventually be named, when scientists rediscover it in the late 20th century buried beneath younger sediments, the Chicxulub crater, after a small Mexican town nearby. Its discovery by the geophysicists Glenn Penfield and Antonio Camargo in 1978, and its confirmation as the KPG impact site by Walter Alvarez, Luis Alvarez, and their colleagues over the next decade, is one of the great scientific stories of the 20th century. But we are not thinking tonight about the scientific discovery. We are thinking about what happens in the minutes and hours and days after the impact. The fireball, the moment the asteroid hits, expands at superheated speeds across the surrounding sea and shoreline. Anything within 100 miles is incinerated in the first few seconds. The shockwave radiates outward, flattening forests across thousands of miles. Massive tsunamis radiate from the impact point, with waves more than 300 feet tall reaching the Gulf Coast within hours. Most of the marine life along the affected coast dies in the next 12 hours. The ejecta is more devastating still. The impact has thrown immense quantities of vaporized rock, sulfur-rich gypsum from the impact site geology, and droplets of molten material high into the upper atmosphere, where some of it reaches near-orbital trajectories. Across the next few hours and days, this ejecta rains back down across the entire globe as a hailstorm of glowing fragments. The friction of re-entry heats the atmosphere itself. For perhaps an hour after the impact, the sky across the entire planet glows red and orange, and surface temperatures on land soar to oven heat. Wildfires ignite across forests on every continent. The land burns. The atmosphere fills with soot and ash and sulfur dioxide. The next phase, lasting weeks to months, is the impact winter. The vast quantities of ash, dust, sulfate aerosols and soot in the atmosphere block sunlight. Across the entire planet, temperatures drop. Photosynthesis collapses. Plants die back. Plankton populations crash in the oceans. The food chains of the planet, both terrestrial and marine, fail catastrophically. The dinosaurs die. They do not all die immediately. Many die in the first few hours from the fireball or the shockwave or the ejecta hailstorm. Many more die in the first few days from the heat and the fires. Most of the survivors of the immediate impact die in the following weeks and months from starvation, as the food chains collapse around them. By the end of the first year, almost no large non-avian dinosaurs remain alive anywhere on Earth. The pterosaurs go, the mosasaurs go, the plesiosaurs go, the ammonites go. The marine reptiles, the great Cretaceous fish, the giant turtles, the great pterosaurs, all gone in years to decades. The last late Cretaceous dinosaur faunas, the Hell Creek dinosaurs we have walked with tonight, are erased. It is one of the most complete and catastrophic mass extinctions in the history of the planet. Around 75% of all species on Earth go extinct. The The dinosaurs lose almost all of their lineages. The marine reptiles lose all of theirs. The ammonites are completely gone. Many large insect lineages disappear. Whole plant communities are devastated. But the extinction is selective in ways that are now well understood. The small survive. The small mammals living in the leaf litter, the small early birds living in the canopies, the small lizards and snakes and frogs and salamanders in the wet hollows, the small turtles in the marshes, the small crocodiles in the rivers, the small fish in the streams. The dinosaurs that survive are the small feathered theropods that have, by this point in the Cretaceous, become the first true birds. They make it through the bottleneck. They will, across the next 66 million years, diversify into all the modern bird species you know. The mammals survive. The small late Cretaceous mammals, including the multituberculates, the small marsupial line ancestors, and the small placental line ancestors, come through the impact winter. They are too small and too generalized to be devastated as completely as the large specialized dinosaurs. Across the next 66 million years, the mammals will radiate into all the modern mammals you know, including, eventually, you. The flowering plants survive. The angiosperms, which have spent the late Cretaceous radiating across the continents, come through the impact winter in many lineages. Their seeds and pollen are dormant in the soil during the worst of the impact winter, and many germinate again as conditions slowly recover. The post-Cretaceous world will be a world of flowering plants in even greater dominance than the Cretaceous itself. We have walked through this story before. We have walked through it in our Century of Darkness episode, the one about the long impact winter and the slow recovery. We have walked through it in our Tyrannosaurus episode, the one about the great mosasaur and the KPG ending. We have walked through it in our T-Rex episode, about the last 24 hours of the dinosaur king. We will not retell all of those tonight. We have already, in our walk so far, honoured the Cretaceous through almost all of its great length. The asteroid and the extinction are the ending of the story we have told. There is no need to dwell on them at length again, but there is one quiet question we can ask gently before we close our walk for the night. What if the asteroid had missed? We have asked this question in different forms in other episodes. We will not ask it in detail tonight. But let us hold it gently as we walk, one last time, back along the Hell Creek floodplain. If the asteroid had missed, if the orbital geometry of the inner solar system had been slightly different 66 million years ago, the Cretaceous would have continued. The continents would have continued their slow drift apart. The Atlantic Ocean would have continued to widen. India would have continued her drift northward toward her eventual collision with Asia. The western interior seaway would have, on its own terms, continued its slow drainage. The dinosaur faunas would have continued. The Triceratops herds would have continued their slow walks along their river bends. The tyrannosaurs would have continued their patient hunting. The Edmontosaurus herds would have continued their long migrations. The mosasaurs would have continued their reign in the warm, shallow seas. The Quetzalcoatlus would have continued his slow, gliding across the warm Cretaceous skies. The climate, however, would have continued its slow cooling trend across the late Cretaceous and into the early Cenozoic. The dinosaur faunas, which were already showing signs of slow change before the asteroid, would have continued evolving. Some lineages would have declined, new lineages would have appeared. The strict late Cretaceous fauna we have walked with tonight would not have lasted forever, regardless of the asteroid. By around 50 million years after the late Cretaceous, which is to say around 15 million years before your own present, the dinosaur faunas would probably have looked quite different from the Hell Creek fauna of 73 million years ago, possibly more cold-adapted forms, possibly fewer specialized giants, possibly some lineages we cannot easily predict. What about mammals? In a world without the KPG extinction, the mammals would have remained small. The dinosaurs would have continued to occupy the large-body niches. The mammals, denied the empty Cenozoic stage that they actually inherited, would never have grown large. There would be no horses. There would be no elephants. There would be no whales. The cetaceans evolved from small terrestrial mammals that took to the sea in the absence of marine reptile competition, which would have been impossible in a world where mosasaurs and plesiosaurs still dominated the seas, and there would almost certainly be no us. The primate lineage, which produced us, evolved across the early Cenozoic. Our deepest primate ancestors were small Cretaceous survivor mammals that radiated into the canopies in the wake of the dinosaur extinction. Without the KPG extinction, those small canopy mammals would have remained small canopy mammals. There would have been no Homo sapiens, there would have been no humans of any kind. The lineage that produced us would have remained. Across the 70 million years from the asteroid to our own moment, small careful animals living in the shadows of larger creatures. We do not exist as we are because the late Cretaceous was eternal. We exist because the late Cretaceous ended. The dinosaurs were our extinction clearer. Their ending was our beginning. Hold the moment lightly. Let the weight of that settle gently. It is not a tragic thought. It is not a triumphant thought. It is simply an honest thought. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs was also the asteroid that, eventually after 66 million years of mammalian patience, gave the world to us. We are set to step away from the asteroid now and return to the late Cretaceous one last time. We are going to honour the matriarch Triceratops one more time before we leave. She's still at the river bend. The night has deepened. The stars are bright now, scattered across the unfamiliar Cretaceous constellations. The sky's moving in the same way your modern sky moves, but the stars are arranged into slightly different patterns, the constellations of 73 million years ago, with the long, slow procession of Earth's axis having rotated the celestial pole many times since this night. The matriarch is sleeping. Her great breath rises and falls. The herd is settled. The calves are tucked close. The young bull is dozing at the edge. In the distance, perhaps a mile away, the Tyrannosaurus rex is settled too for now. He will hunt tomorrow. Tonight he's resting in a small hollow near a stand of conifers, his huge body curled, his great head laid on his folded forelimbs. He breathes slowly. He sleeps. Above them all, the late Cretaceous night turns. The stars wheel. Time moves on at its own slow pace, regardless of who is watching. Take a deep breath. Let your awareness rest, for one final moment, on the matriarch. She is one of the most extraordinary animals the planet has ever produced. She is part of a lineage that will not survive the next million years. Her descendants will be gone, all of them, by the time the asteroid arrives. The Triceratops lineage will end, but she does not know that. She is sleeping. She's content. Her calves are warm. The river runs slow. The night is patient. This is the Cretaceous as we understand it tonight. It is not the whole story. It is what we, with our incomplete fossils and our careful reconstruction, can honestly offer. It is a picture we have built across 2 centuries of slow, patient work. From the first Iguanodon teeth identified by Gideon Mantell in the 1820s to the latest CT scans and stable isotope analyses being conducted in laboratories tonight. It is a picture that will continue to be refined in ways small and large for as long as there are scientists and fossils and patient, careful argument. It is, in its broad strokes, true. It is, in many of its details, our best honest inference. We hold it lightly. We honour it gently. We're grateful to live in a century when so much of it can be reconstructed at all. Pause, briefly. The Cretaceous is over, 66 million years over, but its breath is still in your imagination tonight. The matriarch is still sleeping. The Tyrannosaurus is still resting. The Edmontosaurus herds are still bedded down in the marsh. The Ankylosaurus is still curled in his dry hollow. The Quetzalcoatlus is still asleep on a low branch in a Cretaceous conifer, his wings folded. The mosasaurs are still cruising the warm seaway. The ammonites are still drifting in the moonlight. They are all here, in your imagination, on one long, slow Cretaceous night. We are about to step out of the late Cretaceous slowly. we are set to drift gently back across 66 million years of deep time. We are going to return slowly to your own modern room, your own modern bed, your own modern night. But before we leave, hold the matriarch one more time. She is still breathing. She is still warm. She is still here in the soft theatre of your closed eyes. She will be here whenever you wish to return to her, for as long as you keep this episode in your imagination. The Cretaceous is paused in your mind. It is, in some quiet way, not entirely over. We are about to walk slowly toward the dawn now. The night has been long. We have walked through much of the 79 million year Cretaceous period in a single sitting. The matriarch Triceratops has been sleeping at her river bend for hours now, ever since we first met her in the soft dusk of a Hell Creek evening 73 million years ago. The Cretaceous moon is low in the west. The sky on the eastern horizon is beginning, very faintly, to lighten. The first stirrings of the dawn chorus are starting in the distance, although the major activity is still an hour or so away. A few of the smaller animals are already moving. The small mammals we visited in the leaf litter are returning to their dens to sleep through the coming day. The night-hunting birds are landing on their roosting branches. The cool pre-dawn air carries the soft hum of insects winding down their activity. The matriarch Triceratops stirs. She is, like all large herbivores, a relatively light sleeper. The 8 tons of her body have been resting on the soft mud of the river bend for most of the night, but she has been waking periodically throughout, scanning the area for threats, occasionally shifting her position. Now, with the pre-dawn light beginning to appear, her resting period is coming to an end. She raises her great head. Her brown eyes blink in the dim light. She listens, she sniffs the air. There is no immediate threat. The T-Rex who hunted in this area earlier in the night has long since moved off after his Edmontosaurus meal. The other predators of the floodplain are not currently in her vicinity. Her herd is safe. She heaves herself onto her feet. The ground shifts slightly under her weight as she stands. Her movement triggers the other adults to also begin rising. The calves, still tucked close to their mothers, are reluctant to wake. The mothers nudge them gently with their snouts. The herd is preparing to move. They will graze in the cool dawn hours, find the best foraging in the early light, before settling for a midday rest in shade. This is their daily rhythm. They have followed it for years. The matriarch knows where she wants to lead them this morning, to a patch of ferns and palm fronds about half a mile west, where the foraging is good. She begins to walk. The herd follows. We walk alongside her. The cool morning air is fresh on our skin. The river runs to our right, silver in the pre-dawn light. The forest stretches to our left, dim and still. Insects buzz softly. A small bird sings from a branch above us, the first true bird song of the dawn. The matriarch walks with patient confidence. She is in the prime of her life despite her age. She knows her territory. She knows her herd. She knows the patterns of the seasons, the locations of the best foraging, the safest watering points, the places to avoid in the times of year when predators concentrate. She is, in her own quiet, patient way, a successful animal in a difficult world. She will live for perhaps another decade, perhaps a little less. She will lead this herd through many more dawns. She does not know what is coming. She does not know about the asteroid that 7 million years from this morning will end her lineage forever. She does not know about the slow tectonic shifts that are even now reorganizing her world. She does not know about the long Indian Deccan eruptions beginning somewhere on the far side of the planet. She knows only the immediate world of her river bend, her herd, her seasonal rhythms. Take a deep breath. There is something deeply moving about this. The Cretaceous animals lived their lives with no awareness of the deep time forces that would eventually end their world. They did not know they were the last great chapter of the Mesozoic. They did not know that their lineages would be cut off by Chicxulub. They did not know that the small mammals living in the shadow of their herds would inherit the world after they were gone. They simply lived. They were calmly, ordinarily, deeply present in their own moments. They walked, they grazed, they drank from rivers, they bred, they raised their young, they died their patient natural deaths. They were, in their own quiet ways, complete. There is a lesson here for us too, although we will not press it too hard. We are walking through our own moment, here in our own modern century. We do not know what deep time forces will eventually shape our own ending, or the ending of our species. We do not know what comes next. We can only live, calmly and ordinarily and deeply, in our own present moments. We can graze, we can drink, we can sleep at our own river bends, we can be in our own quiet ways complete. We watch the matriarch walk for a long, quiet moment. She's leading her herd into the dawn. The calves are stumbling along beside their mothers. The young bull is at the rear, watchful. The herd moves slowly across the floodplain toward the patch of ferns where they will graze the morning. The sky is lightening. The dawn is approaching. The Cretaceous moon has set in the west. The stars are fading. The first wash of grey is appearing on the eastern horizon. We stop. We watch the herd move further into the dawn. We do not follow. This is where our long walk ends, soft and slow. Let your awareness rest, one final time on the matriarch. She's walking into her morning. Her herd is with her. The river is behind her. The river is ahead of her. The Cretaceous world is alive around her. She does not need us to watch her any longer. She's fine. She's whole. She's at home in her world. We lift away, slowly, gently, our awareness rising above the floodplain, above the forest, above the slow drift of the warming Cretaceous air. We rise into the lightning sky. The dawn opens around us. The matriarch is small below us now, walking with her herd toward her morning ferns. We rise higher. The whole Cretaceous floodplain is visible below us, the river winding through it, the conifer groves and angiosperm forests scattered across it, the marsh stretching to the east with the distant remnant of the western interior seaway beyond it, the whole continent, the whole hemisphere, the whole curve of the Cretaceous Earth. We rise higher still. We drift up through the warming Cretaceous atmosphere, through the thin upper air into space itself, where the planet hangs blue and white and quiet against the dark. The Cretaceous Earth, seen from above, is a beautiful planet. Its continents are recognizable but slightly different from yours. The Atlantic Ocean is narrower than your modern Atlantic. The western interior seaway is a clear pale band across central North America. India is mid-journey on her northward drift. Australia and Antarctica still cling together. We drift, in this view from space, slowly through deep time. 66 million years pass beneath us in a few quiet breaths. We watch, from the long perspective of orbit, the asteroid arrive. We see the impact flash bloom on the southern Yucatan, a brief, brilliant point of light, and then the darkening of the atmosphere as the global wildfires and the impact winter take hold. We see the continents continue their slow drift. The Atlantic widens. India docks with Asia. Australia separates from Antarctica. The continents settle slowly into your modern arrangement. The dinosaur faunas, after the asteroid, are mostly gone. The world below us is, for many millions of years, a strange and recovering place. New forests grow back. New animal communities slowly emerge. The mammals, those small, careful survivors who lived in the shadows of the dinosaurs, begin their long radiation. They grow larger. They diversify. They occupy the niches left empty by the dinosaurs. The Cenozoic unfolds beneath us in slow, long stretches. The forests come back fully. The grasses appear in vast plains. The whales return to the seas. The primates emerge in tropical canopies. Eventually, in a single brief flicker of evolutionary time, one primate lineage stands upright, develops language, builds cities, sends representatives to the moon, and digs up the bones of the matriarch Triceratops we have walked with tonight. That primate lineage is yours. We have, in this single long evening, walked the Cretaceous together. We have honoured the matriarch at her riverbend. We have honoured the great T-Rex hunting through the ferns. We have honoured the hadrosaur herds in the marshes, the Ankylosaurus in his armoured solitude, the pachycephalosaurs in their head-butting rituals, the Quetzalcoatlus gliding overhead. We have honoured the marine reptiles in the western interior seaway. We have honoured the early Cretaceous Iguanodon herds of the European floodplains, the Argentinosaurus giants of South America, the Velociraptor and Protoceratops fighting in the Mongolian sand, the Edmontosaurus mother giving birth in the marsh. We have honoured the polar dinosaurs of Alaska and Australia and Antarctica. We have honoured the small mammals in the leaf litter and the first birds in the canopies. We have honoured the slow climate, the long greenhouse warmth, the Deccan eruptions, the asteroid arrival. We have honoured, in our long careful walk, an entire 79 million year period of Earth's history. We hold all of it lightly. We do not pretend that our picture is perfect. The fossils are incomplete. The reconstructions are inferences. The exact colours and sounds and feels of the Cretaceous world are partly imagination woven gently into the framework of what the rocks reliably tell us. But the framework itself is real. The continents really were arranged as we have described. The dinosaurs really did walk the floodplains and the marshes and the forests. The marine reptiles really did hunt in the warm shallow seas. The asteroid really did fall. The mammals really did inherit the world. The Cretaceous, as we understand it tonight, is the best honest reconstruction modern science can offer. It will continue to be refined in ways small and large by the careful patient work of paleontologists and geologists and climate scientists across the coming decades and centuries. The picture will change, but the bones, the rocks, the chemistry, the patient accumulation of evidence, these will continue to support a picture of the Cretaceous that is, in its broad strokes, true. Take a deep breath. Let the modern world come back, slowly. Let your room return. Let the soft hum of your modern bedroom, the gentle weight of your bedding, the small steady presence of your own breath, all return. We have walked the Cretaceous together. The walk is, for tonight, over. The matriarch is still walking her herd into her morning, here in your imagination. She will be there, in your mind, whenever you wish to return to her. The Cretaceous is paused in your memory. It is, in some quiet sense, not entirely over. Let your breath slow. Let your body settle deeper into whatever supports you. Let the small last edges of your day go. We have walked through nearly 80 million years of deep time tonight. We have honoured the long, quiet Mesozoic, the patient unfolding of the dinosaur age, the slow ending of one of the planet's great evolutionary chapters. We have honoured, in passing, the small, careful mammals who would inherit the world after the dinosaurs were gone, the lineage that would eventually produce us. We are, in a deep sense, part of this story. We are the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren in the long line of mammalian succession of those small Cretaceous animals in the leaf litter. We carry in our own bodies the deep evolutionary legacy of the Mesozoic. We are ourselves a kind of late Cretaceous outcome, a slow, improbable consequence of the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs and of the 79 million years of dinosaur evolution that came before it. The matriarch is still walking. The dawn is still rising over the Hell Creek floodplain. The Cretaceous, in your imagination, is still alive. Let your breath slow. Let your body settle deeper into whatever supports you. Let the small last edges of your day go. The Cretaceous lasted nearly 80 million years. We have walked through it together tonight. We have met its giants, its small careful survivors, its strange ocean reptiles, its first flowering plants, its great Tyrannosaurs and Triceratops and Edmontosaurus herds, its great pterosaur Quetzalcoatlus, its great mosasaurs of the warm seaway. We have honoured the slow, careful work of the paleontologists and geologists who have, across 2 centuries, reconstructed this world from rock and bone and pollen and chemistry. We have held the picture lightly, knowing it is a reconstruction, knowing it is the best honest one we have. We have also held gently the end of the Cretaceous, the asteroid that closed it, the slow impact winter, the selective extinction of so many of the great lineages we have walked with tonight, the survival of the small, the eventual rise of the mammals, the eventual emergence of our own species 66 million years later into a world whose existence depends on the Cretaceous having ended exactly when it did. We are part of that story. The Cretaceous is, in a deep evolutionary sense, our deepest non-mammalian past. The matriarch Triceratops is not our ancestor, but the small Cretaceous mammals living quietly in her shadow are. The Tyrannosaurus rex is not our ancestor, but the small feathered theropods that became birds, the only dinosaurs to survive Chicxulub, are still here, singing in your modern garden every morning. The Cretaceous, in some quiet sense, still echoes in us all. For tonight, though, we have walked enough. The matriarch is still breathing in your imagination. The herd is still settled at the river bend. The river is still running slow, the stars are still wheeling overhead. Sleep well tonight, traveller. Good night.